All right, so is everybody able to see the screen now? It says CAPE 2006.
Yes, sir.
All right, and everybody is able to hear me well enough?
Yes, sir.
Need to be louder? All right. All right, so we're starting with module 1, CAPE 2006. And, module 1 is gathering and processing information. So you're going to get an extract. It's worth 25 marks. And you guys are expected to know really the basics of language, right? And how to find the writer's purpose, how to find, the main points in the extract, what are language techniques, what are, strategies that can be used in your essays, and so on, right? So we're starting with CAPE 2006. I'm going to read the extract once. If I have enough time, I read it again, and then we're going to go through the questions afterwards. The answers are here as well. And feel free to ask questions when I'm finished. You can type it in the chat, and I will address. Yes?
Are you going live on YouTube for persons that cannot join the speech dates maximum?
Yeah. John is placed to answer that.
The session will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube at a later date. It cannot be live streamed at this moment, but it will be displayed on YouTube. So if you have someone who's interested in joining, you can just share the link. But I believe that we're at our max. And I don't think that anyone else will be able to join the session. So as I said, the session will be recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube today.
All right, yeah, thanks for that, Jenna. Okay, so let me start. We're starting at 2:30. I'm gonna give you guys back the half an hour. So we're gonna end at 5:30 overall. So look at them behind their counters, young, neatly outfitted in their starched fast food uniforms or their linen and polyester clerk suits. They quickly and effortlessly tap the keys on their cash registers and computers. Answer phone look quite efficient, don't they? They seem as if they can think, don't they? Don't let the pressed clothes and technology fool you. Them can. Let there be a glitch or a breakdown, and then you'll see what lies beneath the suits and uniforms and beyond the counters. Operators of broken down cash registers and computers who will fumble to spell and calculate. And you, older than they, will wonder what they spent their primary and secondary school years learning. You can spot them every day, everywhere. Last week, for example, I saw the brain of a young attendant at a fast food outlet shut down the instant his computer crashed. Before the crash, he had appeared capable as he punched the appropriate keys for orders. But when he was faced with having to write down what his customers wanted, he could only operate in slow motion. I know my misfortune was about to order a tuna salad and a lime juice when the system failed. After a minute or two of the two items, he scrubbed a piece of paper and started writing afresh on a second sheet. I was sure I'd get the meal. 2 days after this calamity, I encountered one of Mr. Illiteracy's pals and his innumeracy in a store downtown when I was trying to pay a bill of $26.05 with two $20 bills. Because of a mix-up, the cash closed, and so the girl had to calculate on paper how much change to give me. After an eternity of in her head and calculating on a sheet of paper, she handed me $40.05. But as to my staff teacher, I had already calculated in my head that I should have received $13.95. When I told her so, she seemed mentally paralyzed. Luckily, another suited girl who looked senior in age and rank came to her rescue. She whipped out a calculator, pressed a few keys, and presto, gave me the right change, scolding Miss Innumeracy for her bad math. I left thinking sadly that there was nothing I could do to help them make up for the years that they had spent in their classrooms, not bothering to learn how to read, write, count, or right? And that is an extract adapted from Susan Mills, Between the Lines. It was published in a Trinidadian newspaper in 2004. Does everybody get the gist of it, or do you want me to read again before we go into the questions?
Yeah, sir, I'd like you to read again. That would be nice.
Read again. Persons are saying read. All right. So look at them behind their counters, young, neatly outfitted in their starched fast food uniforms or their linen and polyester clerk suits. They quickly and effortlessly tap the keys on their cash registers and the computers, answer phones, and look quite efficient, don't they? They seem as if they can think, don't they? Don't let the pressed clothes and technology fool you. Many of them can't. Let there be a glitch or a breakdown, and then you'll see what lies beneath the suits and uniforms and beyond the counters. Operates of broken down cash registers and computers who will fumble to spell and calculate. And you, older than they, will wonder what they spent their primary and secondary school years learning. You can spot them every day, everywhere. Last week, for example, I saw the brain of a young attendant at a fast food outlet shut down the instant his computer crashed. Before the crash, he had appeared capable as he punched the appropriate keys for orders. But when he was faced with having to write down what his customers wanted, he could only operate in slow motion. I know because to my misfortune, I was about to order a tuna sandwich and a large orange juice when the system failed. After a minute or two of trying to spell the two items, he scrunched up the piece of paper and started writing afresh on a second sheet. I was not sure I'd get the correct meal. 2 days after this calamity, I encountered one of Mr. Illiteracy's pals, a Miss Innumeracy, in a store downtown when I was trying to pay a bill of $26.05 with two $20 bills. Because of a cash register was closed, and so the young girl had to calculate on paper how much change to give me. After an eternity of scratching her head and calculating on a sheet, she had $14.05. But thanks to my standard 5 teacher, I had already calculated in my head that I received $13.90. I told her she seemed mentally paralyzed. Another suited girl, who was near in age and rank, came to her rescue. She whipped out a calculator, pressed a few keys, and presto, gave me the right change, scolding Miss Innumeracy for her bad math. I left thinking sadly that there was nothing I could do to help for the year I had spent in classrooms, bothering to read, write, count, or think, right? So usually with module 1, the first question that you're asked is state the writer's main purpose in no more than 30 words, usually 20 to 30 words. And you have to do it in 20 to 30 words because this question is testing your ability to summarize, and it has to be brief. So you can't go over it, or at least try not to go over it by much, because where it stops, that's where they're going to stop reading, and they're only going to mark what's there on the paper. So when you're stating the purpose of the writer, right, it has to be a verb. So what is it that the writer is trying to achieve? Is he trying to entertain? Is he trying to inform? Is he trying to educate? Is he trying to discuss? What is he trying to do? So I want a few answers, whether in the chat or you guys can raise your hand and we can go through them one by one. Any ideas, guys? First of all, what is the passage trying to say? So you're somebody, a gentleman or a woman, who is trying to figure out young people seemingly cannot read, write, don't think they have to rely on technology. There's over-dependent technology. And, you know, so this is like a generational challenge. All right, so I see somebody with their hand raised. Go ahead, person with their raised hand.
Well, sir, I'd say he was trying to tell a story, or not really a story, but inform the public of as you said, what the modern technology can do to people, and how it can turn in this case young people brainless. I wouldn't really say the technology though, but I think he was just explaining how his experience dealing with people that don't have the calculators and stuff like that.
Okay. All right, as long as you can fit that into 30 words, you're just about there. The next person with their hand raised. Can the person who has the iPhone? Most persons are saying farming, but what more? So you've gotten the verbs, right? To criticize, to highlight independence of, because many individuals behind a device unable to think on their own. So remember that even though the questions are similar, sometimes what the main is, which is different from what writers do, what their purpose is. So the writers trying to inform, highlight, yeah, criticize, all of it perfectly accept. Issue being too dependent. Protect, you know, annoyance with illiterate workers, serious issues, and on. Yeah, criticize dependency individuals have technologies that they cannot carry out without highlight technology has made people dependent on them too much without being able to think on. All right, most persons have gotten it. So the person who has the iPhone, who has their hand, you can go ahead.
Okay, sir. So I was going to say the writer's main purpose is to criticize restaurant workers of their lack of literacy and numeracy skills as they are dependent upon technology.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So yeah, there's no one specific where you guys need to get, you know, exact wording. You know, it's one main point. The main purpose, it's there. So you in a restaurant and how they work. The right intends to show people they're becoming actually technology in the workplace, suggest capability. So you guys have somebody a while ago who has their hand up.
Sir, I was saying that you were breaking up. I'm not hearing it clearly.
Oh, is it no? A little bit on. Main purpose, highlight how people become dependent on technology. Yeah, so everybody basically the same things in words. So you would get your 5 marks for that, as long as you can keep 30 words. Right. So the next question is write an essay of no more than 500 words in which you include reference to the following: the writer's purpose. Yeah. So you can interchange it. What is the writer's purpose and what is the main point? And I think broadly gone through that. So when you're writing this essay, and this part of the essay is worth 20 marks for 500 words, right? You guys have to be able to show a little bit more than in part A. So the purpose, we have gone through that already: show dependent people and technology, to use that to express the importance of learning ways to do things, bring attention to the irony of people's effectiveness in the workplace. Their fancy suits mean nothing without the use of technology. All right, so the other important part now, strategies and language techniques used. I know most of you would have been taught very differently, but there's no a difference. What are some of the organizational strategies and language techniques used? So I'm accepting answers, but I'm gonna go back up to the passage before I reveal what the answer here is from the CAPE examiners. Does everybody know the difference between organizational strategies and language techniques? The main thing. So organizational strategies, let me read some of the answers first before I say it. So people, examples of them are, which is part of the definition, but what you want to do is to define, right, what each of them are if they do ask you. So things like hyperbole and all of those literature devices and things like that, those are what you would call language techniques. When you talk about organizational strategies, you're talking more about how is the piece written, right? Where are the punctuation mark, sentences short, the paragraph long, what is the effect that it's trying to give, things like that. So they might ask you how to differentiate between two of them, but it's usually in the same question. So they might ask you, what are 3 of the organizational techniques? What are 3 of the language strategies? And so on. So everybody, they're giving examples, which is good. But I want us to give it now specific to this, this passage. What are some of the techniques and the strategies? What is the tone? What is the register? What is the overall thing that the author is delivering the entire passage? The person who has their hand raised, you can go ahead.
Sorry, the appropriateness of the tone would be sarcasm. And for the strategies and language techniques used, it would be dictation, punctuation mark, sentence construction. For the dictation, it has to do with the academic and the repetition.
Okay, yeah. Somebody mentioned condescending as well. I mean, yeah, that's typical when older persons trying to get the younger persons. They say, I can't believe that you're so stupid that you can't do this without a calculator, and you can't do this without a computer or something, right? So the main essence of this question that I want us to understand is how to differentiate between the two of them. If you're talking about an essay with 20 marks, you need to give at least 3 of each. If you find more, give more. So give what it is, the name of it, then you find the example in the paragraph itself and refer it to the line, or again, it doesn't matter, but give them that. And that completely, if you give them 3 examples and you refer to it of each, then that is about half the number of marks of the essay that you need. Right? So we see that person is condescending, right? We see that the person, they use a lot of hyperbole, they use a lot of metaphors, and the examples are there. So I'm accepting more answers before I reveal what the answers that were given. Strategies, cause and effect. Teens are dependent on technology. Effect, the computer is down. Yeah. It's so there's no real, I don't want to say there's no real wrong answer, but it's about how you explain it. Right? In communication studies, there are many different ways to communicate, and the examiners aren't going to be particularly hard. I can say that as a CAPE examiner and having marked papers as well. We just need for you to understand what is going on, right? And you get marks for expression. They're not expecting you to use big and fancy words and what have you, right? They just want you to know that it makes sense and you get the gist of it. Right? Hyperbole, yeah, 2 days after this calamity, yeah. So we can see that the person, they really, they want to do, so the exact. All right, so let me go through some of the answers then. Answers: use of short paragraphs and short sentences appeals to the interest of readers even before they start to read. In writers, very informative and persuasive. Use of illustrations, mainly in the writer's reflection on previous encounters. Persuasive techniques, somebody mentioned rhetorical questions. which wins over the reader's interest. Climax in words, you know, they're being very dramatic and very, you know, yeah, like I said, them going with the most. Literary devices, hyperboles, metaphors, onomatopoeia. I didn't see that one initially, but that is also there. Metonymy, mentally paralyzed, which suggests being petrified. And the writer's choices of words are very important as it adds to the way he exaggerates throughout the extract. And you know, the way he uses words evokes interest as readers get a sense of how willing he is to make his point. For example, look at the word suggestions. Whips out the calculator. After an eternity of scratching your head, I saw the brain of a young. As one can understand that he puts his words on paper, creating an overwhelming interest to prolong reading. Punctuation, as I mentioned earlier, plays an important role in helping to bring out and clarify the extract. Use of expressive dashes helps to bring across the level of expressive writing. Commas, exclamation marks, semicolon, correct use of full stops. So as I said, things like punctuation and how the sentence goes and the ordering of paragraphs, all of those things matter. So, you know, we have to put that in the answer. Evidence of expressive writing, writer relies on personal experiences to make his points. So these are just examples specific to this paragraph. There are many, many more. So the aim of the session is not really to teach them all over again, because your exam, I understand, would be next week. So it's just to apply what you have learned up to this point to specific questions that I think we're going to go through. So it's 2006. So we're going, you know, the mid to early 2000s that we're going to. Organizational structure, introduction, body, conclusion, as long as you know how to explain it and give examples, because even this list, so you see when cape markers are marking, it's just a suggested answers, right? There's some things that may not be necessarily thought about. And then when you think about it, we realize, it can work, it makes sense, and the student understands what's going on. So the list is really exhaustive. So I'm giving you insight into how it is that your papers are going to be marked, and whether you want to believe it or not, examiners don't want to fail anybody. They really, really want you guys to pass. Basic understanding of English language, I think you guys will. So the next question that is usually asked in first module question, the appropriateness of the tone and the register that is used. Does everybody know the difference between tone and register? I mean, I'm accepting answers on that one. All right, tone and register. All right, so register is basically what the author, how he sounds, right? Tone is how the author makes really the passage sound. To really, that's probably an oversimplification, but register, so I have a formal register, right? But then now the tone that I create using that formal register might be something that is condescending, or it might be something that is foreboding or dramatic or whatever the case is. But the register is my language. The tone is the effect that is given off by that register. So the persons who have their hands up, I'm not sure how to refer to you, but you can go ahead. Or I'll ask you to unmute if I want you to speak. Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah, somebody gave a useful thing. Register is like casual, formal, things like that. Tone is like sad, angry, informal.
So the attitude or emotional quality of a piece of communication, such as spoken or written, You can compare feeling with emotion like intention, pain, words, or expression.
Oh, repeat that. Can you repeat it? I'm not sure that I heard you clearly. All right, let me read this response in the chat. Tone refers to the attitude or emotional quality of a piece of communication, such as spoken words, written text. Register refers to level of formality or informality. Yeah, basically, register can be thought of as a spectrum on the language continuum. So writer, he has a sarcastic tone, he creates that tone, but his register is obviously formal. He's not speaking in an informal setting. Well, you can say it's casual as well, but it's not, you know, he's not on the roadside kind of thing, having a chat with friends. He or she is talking, they're written, it appears like a letter to the newspaper, outlining all of that. So the register is obviously formal in that setting. See, so the answer, it says, it's easy to see that tone is very conversational and the writer uses a formal register. It's very appropriate as it appeals to all readers and evokes interest. It suggests that as the reader goes deep down into what the writer is saying, they crave more of what he's saying. So being conversational also creates a better appreciation of the way the writer expresses his points. When people are in conversations, they exaggerate to bring out their points. Evident exaggerate his points seem in his words. And yeah, so you're basically asked to comment, do you think it makes sense in this instance for the writer to use the tone that they did or the register that they did? And the answer is yes, because if I am writing to the newspaper, only in very specific instances would you use a register other than being formal, because you want to appeal to as many people as possible, right? Because many people are going to read the newspaper. If you were in a different setting, like you were at a rally or something, you might use informal conversation and your tone is going to sound very different, right? So as I said, it appeals to all readers. You have to look at the medium of the person is communicating. See, so let me go back up because that will tell you a lot of how to use it. See, it said Trinidad and Tobago Newsday. It's published in a newspaper, right? 2004, page 11. If I'm writing to the newspaper, it's not very likely that it's going to be published if it is like, you know, I'm writing in Patois. Only in very specific circumstances will something be published in Patois. So is it appropriate? Yeah, it is appropriate. All right. So that is the first one. It's done. Yeah, we should be spending 20 minutes on each of these. So, but in the exam, I'm trying to give you to approach the exam. We want you to be able to do the exam in an efficient way. So you need to take maybe about 40 minutes to do a question like this, right? To sit down and write and think about the answers. And whenever you underline specific words, language techniques, strategies, so on, the first question is always going to be like this. It's going to be main point, main purpose, language techniques, organizational strategies, tone that is used, register that is used, and so on. Those are the only things that they're going to ask you in the first module question. So before I move on to the next one, we're doing 3 of these for the first hour, then we take a break. Are there any questions? Is everybody understanding? Is everybody on the same page? So the question is, why wouldn't a conversational tone be a consultative register? Can be. I mean, I don't think there's anything to suggest that it wouldn't be. You know, the person is writing in a way that they're having a conversation with you. So it's like they expect something, right? They expect a response without you really giving a response. So it's possible, yeah. Sir, is it possible you can teach how to write 500-word essay? Introduction, body, conclusion, and so on. Another person is asking about validity. Yes, they do ask about that. But I'm gonna, let me go over this.
No, no.
I don't want to spend
Hmm?
time on it. Just bear in mind that these things are going to be sent to you afterwards, so we don't have to spend a lot of time writing a lot about it. All right. All right. So let me go back over. First essay is always going to be about gathering and processing information. So your 500 words, your introduction. This is an example of a question where they set it up, right? In questions, they might ask you to find everything. So the introduction have to be, what is the vote, right? What is the main purpose of the author? What are his main points? Put that in the first paragraph. The second paragraph must be about your language techniques, your organizational strategies. You give the examples, you point to them in the extract, and you need to try as best as possible give at least 3 of them. And if there are more, put them in there. The conclusion is all about commenting on tone, register, and is it appropriate? It is appropriate. If not, why? And such alternative. Say why it is appropriate or appropriate, and tell us what is it that should have been said differently. How should it have been used? Right. So that is your basic format for 500 words. Like you write 10 words per line, 50 lines, and that is your 20 to 25 marks right there. It's about demonstrating understanding of the, what is going on in the extract, right? There was another question about reliability and validity. Yeah, that also goes into it. We won't get to cover every single thing, but just know that these are the questions that will come in module 1, right? All right. So let me move on because we spent half an hour on the first question. But it should be, the next question should be a bit easier. So read the extract below, answer the question that follows. First time, leap year superstition, this is Cape 2007. First time I heard about superstition was when I mentioned it to my mother that this year was a leap year. Oh, plenty people are going dead this year, she said. Her rather pessimistic assumption startled me. Why would anyone think that because it was a leap year, more people were going to die? Thinking my mother had listened to too many tall tales, I casually mentioned the myth to a friend. Yes, as some hear all the time, leap years are bad luck, she said. Well, I had never heard such a thing. How many people believe this? Intrigued, I proceeded to conduct an informal survey. I was surprised at how many people of all ages held the same view. One person even said that it was already evident, pointing to the spate of killings in Spanish Town since the beginning of the year. But was there any other evidence that suggested that this was a true phenomenon? My first stop after the internet was a sociologist, hoping he could answer my question. Where do people come up with this stuff? Professor Barry Evans is the Dean of the Faculty of Social Science at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. He told me that folklore is sometimes based on the facts, so I launched a fact-finding mission. Statistical Institute of Jamaica has on its website the death rates in Jamaica for the years 1991 to 2002. That time gave me 3 years to study, 1992, 1996, and 2000. I remember you're studying. And here was the facts according to Statin. In 1991, the death rate was 5.6 per 1,000 population. In 1992, it was 5.5, 1993, 5.7, 1995, 6.7, 1997, 6.0, 1999, 6.8, 2000, 6.3, while in 2001, it was 6.2. So with the exception of 1996, there was no noticeable rise in deaths in Jamaica during a leap year. Actually, the rates seem to drop during the leap year. I'm sure many people's hearts are lighter now. So here's some more good news. It's also said that the only time for a woman to propose marriage without bad luck is in a leap year. But don't plan your wedding in a leap year though, or there's sure to be some bad luck, or so the legend goes. All right. Unfortunately, I think if I read this again, the time is running away from us. So I hope most persons would have gotten the gist of this, because the first question again, as we see, is state the writer's main point in no more than 30 words. So what is the main point? I'm listening to answers. We're still on module 1, so don't worry, we haven't moved on. We're going to take a 15 or 10-minute break in between modules. All right, so yeah, what is the main point? I'm listening to answers, I'm open to answers. So to summarize everything that has happened here, clearly the person has found a long-held belief that more people die in leap years. And instead of just believing that data, which happens to be anecdotal, it's just word of mouth, people have said it for years and it's passed down and we believe it. There are many such superstitions in Jamaica. The person wants to use statistical data and evidence to be able to prove it. In this case, it seems that they have disproven it by comparing the death rates in each of the leap years for whatever data they can find. So what really is the main point? And I'm open to answers about the purpose as well. The two of them are not the same thing, but they're usually asked in the same breath. So you may as well just mention them at the same time. Yeah, all right. Main point, many people believe leap year is correlated to having bad luck. Sure. You know, leap year brings bad luck, right? So we get the main idea. So, but what is the author trying to do, right? Okay, someone says to decipher the myth with accurate statistical data and information gathering, and they prove that the myth was false, right? So they tried to disprove it, look for information, look for statistics. I mean, it's pretty clear that is, and then that filters into the next question, what were some of the language techniques and strategies and so on. And you know, everybody gets the gist. Debunk the claim that more people die in leap years than regular years with the use of statistical data. Fine. So everybody is on the same page. So for now, just so we can run through. So it is important that we mention that the real point in the extract is how much people believe in superstitions. The writer points out the degree of the belief that people link to superstitions of death on a leap year and attempts to prove the reliability of such folklores, right? Yeah, so everybody kind of got that. Or using what people say about leap years and the number of deaths, the writer points out our deep belief in superstitions and attempts to prove the reliability of such folktales using statistical data and evidence. Remember, you only have 30 words. So everybody got that. So again, write an essay of no more than 500 words in which we identify the writer's purpose and comment on the strategies and language techniques used to achieve this purpose. So what were some of the techniques and strategies? How did he go about doing it? Everybody is going to mention statistical data. Was there anything else that the writer used? Yeah, all right, yeah. So I am open to answers. Anybody else? And we kind of went through the writer's purpose, point out how much you believe in superstitions and prove the reliability using data and facts. Right. And please, having been an examiner, I realize that most people tend to forget what the organizational strategies are. You guys mostly, students over the years, mostly only focus on language techniques because they look obvious, right? The first thing that jumps out of us are the literary devices and the techniques. But please don't forget the organizational strategies, the paragraphs, right? How the paragraphs, the sentences, the punctuation, how are they ordered? What kind of effect do they give? That is what we want to know. Right? Are they short? Are they long? Are they spicy? What is it? So outline how module 1 paragraphs are supposed to be written. Yeah, person said use of authority. I'll get back to that question soon. Use of authority, rhetorical questions. What else? Yeah, credible source, secondary information, counter argument, statistical data, dialogue, historical data. All right, fine. Yeah, organizational strategies, use of statistical data, authority. Yeah, and somebody commented on the paragraphs. All right. So I'm going to go back over the how to write the essays again. The first paragraph, main purpose and the main points. The second paragraph is this. You know, you comment on the strategies, the techniques, find 3 examples of each, define them and refer to them in the body of the essay. And the last thing that you're asked is to go and comment on how appropriate or inappropriate is it for the writer to have used the tone that they use or the register that they use, right? So I like the answers that I got in the chat. Everybody is basically on the same page. So let me go to what the answers that they're saying. See, and like I said, these are suggested answers. They're not exhaustive. You know, it doesn't mean that if you say it and it's not here that it is wrong. It's just about, can you identify it, 1, and can you explain it, 2. Once you can do 2 things, those 2 things, you're okay. So it's not about teaching you content today. It's about how to approach the exam when you're actually sitting and doing the exam. Because communication studies is a lot of people don't like English. All of you would have done English A, some would have done English B, and they know how it is. They just want to see that you are able to identify content and express yourself, and that's it, right? So use of short paragraphs and short sentences, it evades tediousness, brings clarity, it makes it interesting. Because when it's long and boring and drawn out, people don't like that. Right, the writer is persuasive. You have to comment on that. Rhetorical questions, people mentioned that already. Writer uses first-person narrative, which complemented its conversational tone. There's use of sarcasm. People mentioned that as well. Try to prove that superstitions are not reliable. I'm sure many persons could have identified those. Language is simple and effective. Statistical data and authoritative sources. Everybody said that. The use of literary device assonance. If you're able to identify it, assonance is like you have consecutive words that the vowels sound the same. So tall, tails, tall, wall, fall, that kind of thing. Punctuations, which bring clarity to the writer's work. So remember I said that these things are not exhaustive, but you have 8 examples here. So you would get full marks if you wrote just all of this. See? And it doesn't need to be, remember they give you 500 words. If you can express your point in 300 words, and you'll still get your full marks. All of this answer is 200 words, and it is full marks. And so they don't want you to pad, they don't want you to write a bag of things that don't make any sense. You guys, yeah, and if you run out of time, you can even write bullet points and they'll still mark it, right? So don't be too concerned about that. You guys just need to put the points on the paper if you're running out of time, right? So I just want us to bear that in mind. All right. And then now the next question after that. Well, no, they consolidated all of that into one question. So we won't have anything else, but just know that they can ask you about tone and register and all of that, because that is module 1. All right, so let me move on to this one, 2008. Answers are there. Okay. So I'm taking questions. Anybody wants me to clarify anything or is not understanding anything so far, let me know in the chat, or you can raise your hand. I want to know that most of us are on the same page. And I can go ahead. So someone wants me to differentiate between strategies and techniques again. So, and the best way to identify them. So the most obvious ones are the language techniques. Those are literally literary devices, right? So you can see those. You can see what metaphors are. You can see what personification is. You can see what symbolism is and illustrations and all of those things, right? The ones that are not easy to identify are the organizational strategies, right? You have to look a bit deeper for those, but pay attention to three things when you're looking at those. So you can take notes. Pay attention to the sentence structure, right? The paragraph structure and punctuation. Those three things relate to organizational strategies. How is the thing organized, right? You know, short, spicy, long and tedious, that they prefer to use sentences or whatever it is. How are they making the points? How is what does the punctuation look like? Is it dramatic? Is it just smooth flowing and what have you? So that's in a nutshell how you differentiate between the two of them. Organizational strategies are how the thing is organized in terms of its structure. Language techniques are like the flair that you add onto it, the literary devices that everybody knows from English B and some of it in English A as well. So are you clearer on it now with that explanation? Because I don't want to make it too complex for everybody. I'm trying to break it down into the simplest version for you to be able to get it. All right. So last one, then we'll take a break. Hopefully take us to 3:30. So it's an alarming prospect. The recent report out of the UK equating the spread of surveillance technology to the rise of the Big Brother state is enough to more than the occasional shiver down one's spine. It would seem that George Orwell's society of the further having transport from the pages of his satirical novel 1984 directly into the real world. Totalitarian society of Orwell, written in 1949, has no place for truth since historical records are destroyed and information is replaced by propaganda. Additionally, thought and love attract punishment and practice simply doesn't exist. But it is the ominous warning. Big Brother is watching you, conveyed through placards in the imaginary Orwellian state that is probably best remembered by readers of 1984. That warning is certainly apropos if the British report on the of the state is anything to go by. Drawn up by a team of respected academics, the document is set to paint a disturbing picture of what Britain and elsewhere, I suggest, could be like in 10 years, unless the use of spy technologies is regulated. Anyone reading the newspaper or watching the international TV news within the last week or so would have gathered, let's go down too far, that UK is one of the three world leaders in use of surveillance technology, and the Brits the most spied on citizens in what most of us still think of as the free world. A fallout of New York's 9/11 terrorist attack and more recent London bombings, this obsession with surveillance is becoming contagious. And my guess is that it won't be long before Big Brother makes his presence more obvious here in our own backyard. The British report on the spread of surveillance technology looks at the time in the not too distant future when human beings everywhere may be forced to be microchipped with implants under the skin storing personal information, allowing everybody's movements to be tracked. The claim made by editors, this is it's like a long one, claim made by editors, Dr. David Murakami Wood, managing editor of the journal, and Dr. Christy Ball, Open University lecturer in organization studies, is astonishing. It asserts that by 2016, almost every movement, purchase, and communication of these chip citizens could be monitored by a complex network of interlinking surveillance technologies. Some time ago, it was disclosed that the use of radio frequency identification in humans with the implantation of chips in 70 mentally ill patients was being put on trial in the United States. If the claims of the official British report proved to be accurate, such use would in a decade or so be unlimited and the Orwellian state would have become a reality. Only this past week, the BBC revealed the presence of 4.2 million surveillance cameras in Britain, and viewers were informed that the average Briton is caught on camera some 300 times every day. So This was written by Jeanette Lane Clark, Shades of 1984. That's the name of the extract in the Sunday Sun, it's a British newspaper in 2006. So it's a column. Most persons hopefully picked up on that, like, you know, a newspaper column that the person is giving an opinion or an editorial, and I'm going to allow you to tell me what it's talking about, but it should be clear enough. And I think even though this was written almost 20 years ago, it seems as if it could be applicable to today. There are some technologies that are more in use, and it seems as if our privacy is being eroded and what have you, with like AI and all of those things that are happening. So everybody knows how it goes already. The first question is dealing with, as I said, the main point and the purpose, but they sometimes put all of them together. So write an essay of no more than 500 words, put everything together, in which you include references to the following the writer's purpose. So what is the writer's purpose? Most persons should pick up on that. Fine. Spy technology has become more prevalent, the privacy of each individual will decrease, and the use of technology will become more malicious. Yeah, that's nice and very concise and brief. Anybody else? Or everybody's on the same page? Like, don't be afraid if somebody has said the answer already. It can be said in many different ways. So the point is for all of us to be able to learn and to understand. Writer's purpose, I assume everybody's on the same page. All right, but it's clear. The writer's purpose is clear. It's not ambiguous. So they inform us about the rise of surveillance technology in Britain, as well as the importance of this growing technology, give readers an idea of future surveillance technology and implications on our survival and privacy, to mention, and to reveal the irony of living in a free society. In fact, we are not free with such technologies. So unless they specify that it must be 30 words, you are allowed to write as much as you want here in an essay of 500. But if you can be concise, then try to be concise. The point is that unless they specify it and say 30 words, you know, because this is more than 30 words and the writer had more than one purpose. So you want to write to the examiner's satisfaction. And so B, strategies and language techniques used. I assume that most persons are, you know, they're already off it with it. Main purpose is to educate the public on the increasing development of spy technology in Britain. Yeah, that is a good answer as well. Yeah, so everybody kind of has it. All right, let me go down to strategies and techniques used. Writer uses the following techniques and strategies: short paragraphs and sentences. And when you do more of these types of questions, you're going to realize all the answers are broadly similar. Short paragraphs and sentences, use of punctuations. As I said, these are organizational strategies, correct full stops, exclamation marks, authoritative sources. I don't know if anybody picked up on that, because the two persons' names were mentioned and their credentials were given. So that is important. Let me go back up and show you. See, the claim made by editors. See, somebody is a managing director of a journal and the other person is a university lecturer. So I hope nobody missed that, because that is something that was used. And other statistical data and evidence were given. Very informative writing. It was expository, you know, it's trying to expose a particular problem. The use of metonymy in the literary device. Big brother state refers to an enemy. Use of irony, the fact that, you know, we claim that we are free, but we are not free because all these technologies are spying on us and picking up our data and all of that. So we don't live in a free society. The tone is ironic and it's conversational. And of course, the register is formal, right? So, you know, they're not going to say it explicitly, but you need to comment on tone and register unless they ask you, right? And say in a separate prompt, comment on tone and register. But you need to have it there in an essay of 500 words, right? When you're commenting on strategies and techniques and what have you. Why are authoritative sources used? Literary allusion is there. Yes, remember I said these are suggested answers, so there are more answers. Formal language, straightforward, evidence, statistics, expert opinion, the doctor, writer's purpose, informed public, broad growing technology in Britain, and so on. All right, yeah. Somebody asked, why are the authoritative sources used? Well, why are authoritative sources used? Because you want to build credibility. The person is writing about something that is very obviously scientific. It's one, and it's very relevant. So you want to have somebody in the realm of academia to comment on it. The person is a university lecturer and the other person is an editor of a journal. So it gives more credibility to what the person is saying. I'm writing a newspaper column, but who am I? The author have any credentials, but I can refer to the person and say, look, that person said this, so therefore, and these are their credentials, they know what they're saying. So it's more likely to be believed. So that's why we use authoritative sources. And C, effectiveness of the strategies and techniques identified above in achieving the writer's purpose and strategies. So remember, you're commenting on the effectiveness of it. Are they effective? If they're not effective, what should the writer have used instead? I think they're very effective because the person is trying to write an expository. You're trying to expose things as happening for the way that they are. So they use statistics, so they use authoritative sources. They're trying to convince the public that this is a specific problem that needs to be dealt with and something that we need to prepare for. Right? The person was referring to the future, 10 years time, and even then that's now 7 years ago. So, they have painted a picture, basically. They have illustrated what it is going to happen. But that's just my answer. If anybody disagrees or think that it wasn't effective, I would want you to be able to say why. Comment on the effectiveness. So, I basically said it. Alliteration is there, transitional words, factual evidence. In order to comment on the effectiveness, you can identify the type of piece it is. Yeah, that's part of the literary strategies and the organizational techniques that you need to know. You have to be able to say, what kind of piece is it? Is it expository? Is it informational? Is it something that is meant to entertain? What is it, right? So we need to be able to do that in order to comment on the effectiveness. So the answer given here, which I said is just a suggested answer. Some paragraphs and sentences offers less tediousness in reading and appeals to the interest of readers from a glance. Yeah, it's not like an academic journal, it's a newspaper column every Sunday, and it's on a Sunday. Everybody just wants to read something light and understand what it is saying. So the use of punctuation such as commas, expressive dashes, exclamation marks add to the expressive writing techniques. It strikes interest in the readers. It's not supposed to bore you. Use of irony is appropriate since it creates tone of the extra. The writer needs to be ironic, right? As I said, we claim to live in a free society, but we're not really free, right? Metonymy, Big Brother state, they're referring to the fact that, they're spying on us, basically, with all of these technologies. Readers are willing to continue to read to find out who is the writer referring to? What is this Big Brother that they're all talking about? Right? And they pay close attention to words and expression. Formal register complements the conversational tone, and authoritative data adds to the reliability of the writer's opinions and claims, which I'm sure most of us can appreciate. They added data from experts who are in the field and so on. All right, so we've been going for an hour, and we have dealt with module 1. So I'm taking questions about module 1, then we can jump into our 10-minute break, and we come back at 20 minutes to 20 minutes. So is everybody on the right track, on the right page? Everybody not they're not understanding, no? You have to only explain one, no, as many of them as possible. Information effective, use of evidence, authoritative sources, use of literary action was adequately effective as it shows the outcome of increased pervasive spy technology. Yeah. Okay. At this point, to read notes to have a base. Okay, so at this point with an exam next week, I would suggest that you just read summaries of these particular things. So module 1, let's go through it again. They're always going to ask you main point, main purpose. How do you comment on that? The second thing that they're going to ask, language techniques, organizational strategies. The third thing that they're going to ask is the tone, the register, comment on how appropriate they are, comment on the effectiveness of the techniques. That's it. Those 5 or 6 items must add up to the 500-word essay. Put all of those on paper, like I said, put the points there, just like every, it's not a paragraph, these are bullet points of 200 or so words, and they will mark it same way, right? They'll give you your marks. So they really, really want you to pass. They don't want you to fail. Just be as simple as possible without being overly simplistic. And I think you guys should be fine. Because module 1 is typically the module that people have content to be able to express, right? It's not like the other, which you need to know more specific jargons and what. So, but we're going to go into module 2 after the 10-minute break. So anybody who has your friends and what have you, they jump off a call, tell them to come back in 10 minutes, and then we start again. All right. Someone asked me to go over appropriateness, explain tones, registers. Did they change the way how module 1 question is asked, as in 3 of the 1? What would be an ideal introduction? All right, so let me try to go through each of these. An ideal introduction is to merely summarize what the extract is saying. So say that this, just describe it. This is what the author is referring to, the topic that he's speaking about, and this is what he's trying to do. Do that in 2 or 3 sentences and you're fine. That's your introduction. All of these things will be shared with you after, so don't worry about it. Should you still state credibility or reliability? Yeah, you should. And why is it credible? Why is it reliable? You should mention that, right? That is part of module 1. Some cases they will ask you explicitly, other cases they will not say it, but it helps. It doesn't hurt to do that. You'll get extra marks. Well, you'll get marks for it. What you're going to talk about. I would not personally waste time to list what we're going to talk about in the intro, because remember you have a word limit. So it's not like a full academic paper where you say, okay, in chapter 3 or chapter 2, we're going to talk about this and talk about that. No. So but that's just my suggestion. If you know you won't go over the word limit, otherwise don't do it. Someone is asking me, could you go over appropriateness, please? So appropriateness means does it fit, right? Does this fit of this technique or this strategy? Is it appropriate? Does it fit this particular, right? So for example, if I was writing a newspaper article, I wouldn't write in patois because not everybody is going to understand it. So I can say it's inappropriate for this medium or for this topic that is being spoken about. Things like that, right? You won't always pick up on it, but that is how it is. Somebody has their hand raised. I'm going to allow you to speak.
Sir, where are you going to post the material after the call?
What was that? Why am I going to
Post the material after the call, because you mentioned posting some material after.
Right. So it's not, so I'm just going through the material. Organizers are the ones who are going to share everything that needs to be shared. I expect that they will do this for your exam.
Okay, where will it be shared?
As soon as possible. Well, you'd have to ask them, and they'd better be able to advise you. Someone is asking, what is the minimum number of words you want us to write? All right, the minimum, I would say not less than 300. I don't think you can adequately bring across what they're asking you in less than 300 to 350 words, and 500 is the max, because I don't want you to go past 500. If you write just 100 words or 200 words, they're going to know that something is missing. So you need to be able to identify enough to get the marks that they're asking. It's 25 marks, right? Each of them is 25, 25, 25. So you need to have a, be able to discern that this requires a bit more than just stating or identifying. I have to explain it as best as possible, right? Okay, I don't know if there were any other questions. I mentioned reliability. Okay, I think that's it. Remember, we don't want to eat into the break because we want to start back at 4:15. We still have to go through 3 of the next one. And I think the last module is a bit shorter, so we're going to go through 3 of them, but we're not going to, we probably won't need a whole hour to go through 3 questions in the last one. All right, guys, we're back. Very short break, but we're moving into module 2 now. So, you know, module 2 is language and the community. So this is the one with patois and dialect and Creole and things like that. Most persons are still here. I see still the 99 persons are here. Anybody can just indicate if they're hearing me well enough, and then we can jump right into it. So anybody can put in.
Yes, sir.
So I can hear you well.
Good. Yeah, man, I'm here. All right. So language and community. So it deals with patois, Creole. It may not necessarily be Jamaican. It can be, you know, Eastern Caribbean as well, persons, but it's not giving you anything that is too difficult to understand. You have more latitude to answer these questions than with the others, because they really just want you to know, why is it that we use patois when we use it? Why is it that we should use standard English when we use it? And the extracts usually are a bit shorter. I don't think your requirements are as much as it was in module 1, but let us go through and we will see. So I'm going to read this one from Cape 2004, and we do 2 more after that, then we take another 10-minute break, and then we'll go into the final module. So reading this excerpt now, that's why this country will never get ahead, she said, walking around her beauty parlor like a bee just stinger. She fold up towels, hang up robes, straighten things that don't need straightening. I wish Pinky would cool down though. People here have no discipline, she's saying. The whole time I was in England, there wasn't a 1 power cut, and that's big, prosperous country. Now look at this little island that can't hold its head above water, and every minute somebody's on strike. I started to tell her that I hear about a whole heap of strikes in England, but I changed my mind. I don't feel like arguing. I just want her to wash my hair and braid it. You don't need electricity for that, but she keep on walking up and down. She getting on my nerves now. Why she have to criticize the island so much when it's the only place we have for ourselves? I say, look, Pinky, you can wash my hair. At least some sunshine coming in so you can see what you're doing. To tell you the truth, Miss Daisy, I don't feel like doing any work today. The last time I see Pinky, she's shining like a morning star. Guess what, Miss Daisy, guess what? I can't believe it's she talking. The English accent gone clean. What, I say, what? I get visa to go to America. I go to the embassy from 5 o'clock this morning, stand up 3 hours in line before it opened. And when I tell her going to visit a cousin who getting married, he never asks me a thing, just stamp multiple indefinite in my passport. It's gone, me gone, you know. First plane I get on, too hot here. Miss Daisy, too hot. Can't stand sun. Now, how you want your hair done today? So that extract was adapted from Alicia Mackenzie in Satellite City and Other Stories. It was published in the UK, but she herself is a Caribbean national. And from the extract, you can tell that it is dialect. It's not Jamaican Creole, but it is dialect. All right. So we're on module 2, guys, for those who are just joining again. Module 2, is there time to read it again? I'm gonna attempt to read it again. And then we get right into the questions. So just to remind everybody, it is an extract that is in, some of it is Creole, it's not necessarily Jamaican patois. You can tell it sounds Eastern Caribbean, it probably even sounds Trinidadian. We don't know what the country is, but giving you background on the author and the where it was published. So I'm gonna read it again. All right. So yeah, there's a chance that some person might have done this paper again. You know, there are not many of comes to these papers. So that's why this country will never get ahead. Never get ahead, she said. Walking around her beauty parlor like a bee just sting her. She fold up towels, hang up robes, straighten things that don't need straightening. I wish Pinky would cool down though. People here have no discipline, she's saying. The whole time I was in England, there wasn't one power cut, and that's a big, prosperous country. Now look at this little island that can't hold its head above water, and every minute somebody's on strike. I started to tell her that I hear about a whole heap of strikes in England, but I changed my mind. I don't feel like arguing. I just want her to wash my hair and braid it. You don't need electricity for that. But she keep on walking up and down. She gets on my nerves now. Why she have to criticize the island so much when it's the only place we have for ourselves? I say, look, Pinky, you can wash my hair. At least some sunshine coming in so you can see what you're doing. To tell you the truth, Miss Daisy, I don't feel like doing any work today. The last time I see Pinky, she's shining like a morning star. Guess what, Miss Daisy, guess what? I can't believe it's she talking, the English accent gone clean. What, I say, what? I get visa to go to America. I go to the embassy from 5 o'clock this morning, stand up 3 hours in line before it open. And when I tell I going to visit a cousin who getting married, he never asked me a thing. Just stamp multiple indefinite in my passport. It's gone, me gone, you know. First plane I get on, it's too hot here, Miss Daisy, too hot. Can't stand the sun. Now, how you want your hair done today? And that, to repeat, was taken from a book of short stories written by a Caribbean national. The details are right there on the right-hand corner. So again, it's another 500-word essay, but the requirements are a little bit different. You're now asked to discuss the use of language in the excerpt, concentrating on the following. So the first thing is the relation between the writer's use of language and the context of the narrative. So like I said, all module 2 questions are similar. They're gonna ask you the same things as each of the others. So the relation between the writer's use of language and the context of the narrative. What is the use of language, right? What is patois? What is said in dialect or patois or Creole? And what is in standard English? This module deals with that dichotomy, patois and standard English. Why is each of them used? What is the context in which each of them is used? Those are the things that you're supposed to set your mind to think about. Right? So I'm accepting answers on that one. Relation between the writer's use of language before I reveal the answer itself. Relation between the writer's use of language and the context of the narrative. Anybody, guys? You can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat. Remember, this one is all about language use, language and the community. So it's about patois, dialect, social context, things like that. Language is informal, since they're a hairdresser, context is appropriate. Okay, all right. So remember, so we're writing an essay of 500 words, and this is gonna be our introduction. So what should we put really to introduce this entire thing? Right? The setting, comment on what things like that. What's, you know, well, you're in a hairdresser. Right, so part of the answer is already there. The writer's language carries both a communicative and a reflective purpose. Context behind the language suggests a situation of the way in which people view languages and their implications on communication. The context suggests a mixture of pride, as in Miss Daisy, and resentment, as in Pinky. The writer's use of language acts as a contrast to the opinions of each character. For Pinky, she uses her language as a reflection of what she sees as a civilized country. She views Creole as shameful, and this is seen in her behavior. But for Miss Daisy, the language is important as it's thus enforced by her thing of it is the only thing they have. Right? Does everybody understand what that is saying? So in most of these module 2, you're going to find a dichotomy between people who use Creole and people who use standard English. So why is it that they're basically asking you why it is that the person who uses Creole, why did they do it? And the person who uses standard English, why did they do it? Right? So they're trying to both communicate something, each of them communicating something distinct. Right? So see, it says that Miss Daisy is proud, right? She's proud of Creole. She's proud of the fact that they live in an Caribbean island where they have freedom to express themselves and so on, where they don't have to, you know, pretend and what have you. But Pinky is not into that. Pinky wants to migrate and speak the King's English and be proper and what have you, right? So they're contrasting each other, right? So Pinky uses her language as a reflection of what she sees in a civilized country, right? In England, they don't have power cuts. They don't have to deal with a lot of stuff that we have to deal with in a developing country. But she sees Creole as shameful. You know, you can't go abroad and chat bad and what have you, right? And her behavior is a bit uppity. It can be condescending. It is, you know, along those lines. But for Miss Daisy, she's proud of the language. You know, we speak Creole and it's the only thing we have. So I hope that persons have seen that in this extract. Explain how it is reflective. Creole was used when they were experiencing high intense emotions. Yeah, Creole is a better expressor of emotion and feeling than standard English, right? So I just want to address this again, that yes, you can take screenshots and write down and stuff, but remember, it's going to be shared with you anyway, so you don't have to worry. Yeah, so someone asks, how is it reflective? So reading the extract, right? The person, let's start with Pinky, right? She's speaking mostly standard English, proper English for the whole time. She was in England before. So she's reflecting on her time in England, right? That is the first way in which she is reflective. And then now Miss Daisy's reflection is saying, yeah, no, this language is the only thing we have, right? You know, despite all the troubles that we have. And she's saying it in a way that it is so vibrant and vivid, using her patois, right? Look, Pinky, you can wash my hair, at least some sunshine coming in so you can do what you're doing. You know, why she have to criticize the island so much when it's the only place we have for herself? She's upset. She feels like she has insulted us, you know, who live on this island, right? And she has expressed that using patois. It's hard to really express that using standard English. So, you know, that is how it is reflective. They are reflecting on their respective attitudes based on their experiences, and it comes out in their use of language, right? So I hope I have answered that question. They're also part of the same speech community. The expert gives us a view on attitudes to language in a way. Yeah, I would agree with that. So it's about your attitude to language, but probably jumping ahead a little bit. That's usually one of the next questions that they ask, like what are the attitudes to language? What is the social context in which these languages are used? And the distinction is clear as day. English is seen to be good. English is seen to be proper. It is the only way to express certain formal stuff, whereas patois is seen as bad. It is the only way to express things that are not of such a good nature, right? So move on to the next question, the appropriateness of the narrator's language. You know, why is it appropriate? And I'll just jump into the answer. There are two of them. You know, we use Creole and Standard English. The Creole and Standard English are appropriate since it not only outlines two different views on what culture is, but also feelings. It suggests that both can be used as a form of communication. Towards this end, even Pinky abandoned her use of Standard English to express her joy, thus revealing the characteristics and pleasures of both languages. So remember what I said? I said that there's a distinction between the two of them, and it's really highlighted in module 2. You know, you're basically asked to comment, why is Creole appropriate or fitting here? Why is Standard English appropriate or fitting there, right? And Creole, as we have mentioned, is used to really express those sorts of emotions in an informal way that you cannot find. If you use it in Standard English, it would just sound weird. Like, you know, imagine, for example, I'm trying to express joy and what have you. I'm not going to sound like an old Englishman. You know, I'm going to scream in patois and Creole than Standard English. So that is what basically this is saying. Why is it appropriate? It is appropriate because English has its place, but it's also saying that patois has its place, Creole has its place, and each of them is meant to convey something different. So, usually I use Creole and Standard English to differentiate between higher and lower class. Yeah, that also comes in. Pinky wants people to believe people are more civilized. Creole is informal. Daisy is proud of her descent and finds nothing wrong. She believes it's better language to express yourself. All right, so I see somebody says that the question is confusing. We're going to do 2 more, so don't worry too much about it. The point I'm using the question to illustrate or to teach is that you must be able to see why it is that we are using patois when we use it and English when we use it, and why. You know, why do we use patois here? Why do we use English here? And the answer to that is that they both have their place in expressing different ideas and conveying different thoughts. And all of your answer from module 2 is going to revolve around that main thing. Creole and Standard English, who uses it, why is it appropriate? And that's really it, right? So the next part of the question asks whether Pinky's language was motivated by linguistic and or non-linguistic factors. So this is going to come up very frequently. Linguistic factors are things related to language. So grammar, syntax, spelling, vocabulary, all of those things. Is she using it for those reasons or something else? Non-linguistic factors are things like society, geography, educational level, social class that was mentioned just now. Things like that, the corporate setting, non-corporate setting, whatever the case might be. Those are non-linguistic factors. They have nothing to do with language, geography, society, whatever the case might be. Someone has their hand raised. I'm going to allow it to speak.
Hey, sir, can you repeat what is linguistic and non-linguistic again?
Right. So linguistic relates to language, things that relate to the language itself. So grammar, syntax, you know, and this is a non-exhaustive list. Grammar, syntax, vocabulary, things like that. They relate to the language itself. It's literally English language, the elements of English of the language. Non-linguistic have nothing to do with language. So I'm not using patois because of anything related to the language. I'm using patois because I come from a different geographical area, or I have a different educational level, or something related to that. Those are non-linguistic factors. They have nothing to do with the language itself. Let me read.
Sir, I have a question. Would biases fall under non-linguistic factors?
Yeah, it would. It would. So that is also a part of it. Social biases, social class, things like that, right? So remember, linguistic, language, lexicon, meaning, whatever. Non-linguistic is not related to that at all. So here's the answer. Pinky's language is basically motivated by non-linguistic factors. As we can see, you know, she's not using English because it has good grammar or because of the way the words are pronounced. She's using it because of the fact that we associate English with being civilized, right? So pronunciation, grammar, spelling, none of that means anything to her. She's not using it. She's not writing an essay. She's not writing a formal thing. She's using it because we think she's civilized. Person's language is motivated by non-linguistic factors when they use it in a way that has nothing to do with language, as I was saying, but because it's related to attitude, education, geography. In such a case, the person simply chooses that language because it suits him or her, and it's evident with Pinky. In the end, Pinky only used Creole because she now sees it as a way of expressing joy at getting her visa. So I hope that dichotomy was clear, that linguistic and non-linguistic factors more often than not, unless you are in a formal setting like an exam, or you are doing something like writing a journal or in a newspaper, you're going to use English language for its linguistic features because it has good, because of the spelling, because of the grammar, because of the pronunciation. Otherwise, no, we use language mostly because of where we come from, how educated we are, and our attitude. Someone mentioned biases, that's attitude, social biases and things like that. All right. And then the last question in this first one is ways in which a video presentation of this interaction will help to highlight the fact that these are Caribbean speakers communicating in a Caribbean setting, right? And that question is always there, like how can we actualize this thing? If they were acting as a stage play or a video, right? How would it come across? So the audience would get to see a non-verbal form of communication. Just think about it. Everything that is written on paper, if I made that into a movie script or a play script and we were acting on stage, what are some of the things that would bring these things that we have discussed across, right? So we would see that there in a hairdressing shop, right? So the props around us will give us that feel of it being Caribbean. We would see the costumes that they wear, you know, for persons who are in a hairdresser's shop. What are some of, how would it look, right? It would bring clarity as it appeals to not only the ears, but to sight. And the audience would get to see non-verbal form of communication. They'll get to see gesticulations. They'll get to see them animated. They would get to see Pinky talking about her standard English, and they would get to see Miss Daisy talking about her Creole, right? So those are the things that we expect you to write. A question like this is usually worth 4 marks, so 4 points, 4 marks. And I think it's more or less straightforward. They're just asking you, if we were to make this into a play, what are some of the elements of a play that would bring out these things? Yeah, body language, background, the way they dress, all of those things, the way they speak. Just imagine a stage play like Oliver Samuels and Glenn Campbell and those people, right? We're just acting out what is on paper, right? So I think that has more or less covered that question. It's really not as complex as the one before it, right? You have more latitude to write things that are related to everyday situations, right? So people are in a hairdresser, people are in a bar, people are on the road, people are in the market. Those things are everyday situations that you can just think about it, right? Persons will speak Patois because they are more comfortable in it, or because they come from a certain place, and you know the things like basilect and acrolect and mesolect and things like that. How close or how far is it to standard English, right? How does it come across? Things like that. Those are the things we want to come out in this module 2 essay. Right? Tone of voice, yeah. A, B, or C answered as is, or essay format. They're not going to kill you if you write an essay. I think this one was an essay. I can't remember. I'm trying first to go through quickly. But yeah, this is an essay. So you can combine them, or if you write them separately, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. As long as you have the points on the paper and you have made it clear that this is the question that you're answering, they're going to mark it and you'll get the marks. But you need to label it properly so that they can understand that I'm answering 1A, 1B, 1C, whatever, right? So we're moving on to the second one now. As I said, it shouldn't really take us more than 20 minutes to do each of these. Yeah, if you write it separately, if they say to write it separate, write it separate. If they say to write an essay, write an essay. If they do not specify, then it doesn't matter, right? So you should, as long as the points are on the paper, all right? But it is always best, I think, to write it in an essay. Only if I'm running out of time do I put bullet points. But an examiner is going to read and say, all right, the student is probably running out of time, but they want to put the points on the paper. Just put it on the paper and you'll be fine. But we really more than likely want you to write an essay, even if they don't specify. All right, so moving on to 2006. This is another excerpt. Similar treatment. Following is a discussion between Andrea, who is the university student, and Natasha, a primary student whom Andrea tutors. So Natasha was very intelligent, almost unchildlike, and Andrea felt at a loss. She didn't know how to talk to children who didn't particularly act like children, didn't know what tone to adopt, what subject might be good. She said, "Do you like dolls?" And Natasha said, "When I grow up, I'm going to be an astronaut." So Andrea hadn't heard that one before. Doctor, teacher, nurse, and policeman she was used to, but not astronaut, especially not from a child who probably never been further than Kingston. She felt herself pitying the child for being so ambitious, would never be fulfilled. She said, "That's a good profession. Why do you want to do that?" "So I can float around. My teacher says there's no gravity in space, so you have to float. They showed a movie at school about it, and I know that's what I want to do." Andrea burst out laughing. How many people were there who wanted to float? Natasha was staring at her and she tried to stop laughing, swallowed hard. Natasha said, "What are you going to be, a doctor?" "No," Andrea said, "I'm studying languages, French and Spanish. I'll probably teach when I graduate." Oh, she was unimpressed and Andrea felt belittled. Natasha spoke good English, which was strange because her mother knew only dialect. When Mrs. Jackson brought Natasha, she had tried to speak properly, but Andrea knew it was beyond her. She herself spoke Creole to the woman to put her at ease, but Mrs. Jackson had been insulted. She left quickly, telling Natasha she'd be back for her at 1 o'clock. Right? So this was taken from the same book with the short stories, just a different one. I'm going to read it again, but the last paragraph is what's important, most important. This is short. So Natasha was very intelligent, almost unchildlike. Remember, Natasha is a child, but she seems to be very prodigious. She is meaning that she's wise beyond her years. Like she's a child, but she's like an adult. And Andrea felt at a loss. She didn't know how to talk to children who didn't particularly act like children, didn't know what tone to adopt, what subject might be good. She said, "Do you like dolls?" And Natasha said, "When I grow up, I'm going to be an astronaut." Andrea hadn't heard that one before. Doctor, teacher, nurse, and policeman she was used to, but not astronaut, especially not from a child who probably never been further than Kingston. She felt herself pitying the child for being so ambitious, would never be fulfilled. She said, "That's a good profession. Why do you want to do that?" "So I can float around. My teacher says there's no gravity in space, so you have to float. They showed a movie at school about it, and I know that's what I want to do." Andrea burst out laughing. How many people were there who wanted to float? Natasha was staring at her and she tried to stop laughing, swallowed hard. Natasha said, "What are you going to be, a doctor?" "No," Andrea said, "I'm studying languages, French and Spanish. I'll probably teach when I graduate." Oh, she was unimpressed and Andrea felt belittled. Natasha spoke good English, which was strange because her mother knew only dialect. When Mrs. Jackson brought Natasha, she had tried to speak properly, but Andrea knew it was beyond her. Right? Mrs. Jackson is Natasha's mom. She herself spoke Creole to the woman to put her at ease, but Mrs. Jackson had been insulted. She left quickly, telling Natasha she'd be back for her at 1 o'clock. So we see Natasha speaks English, her mother doesn't speak good English. So Andrea, the babysitter, basically picked up on that and said she's going to try to speak to her her mom in Creole, and the mom got insulted by that and left quickly, right? So these are some of the attitudes to language that I hope you would have paid attention to in this particular extract. All right, so the first question, again, in an essay of no more than 500 words, discuss Natasha's possible motivation for achieving a good command of the English language. So I'm listening to the answers. Why would Natasha, as a young child, see it fit to now be speaking such good English that even a university student is impressed by how good the English is? I mean, she said it, and she said it in the extract. Okay, I'm going to allow you to speak.
To be successful in her future endeavors.
Yeah, that's one. I mean, she said she wants to be an astronaut. You have to, I guess, it's international, so having a good command of the English language helps. It helps there because of her career. Yeah, she wanted to study, become an astronaut. Okay, yeah, most persons got it. You know, but that's just one of them. You know, she seems smart, as it's clear that she can recall what her teacher says, which suggests her ability to learn and speak well. So, you know, she wants to speak proper English because she recognizes that it is the method of communication that will enable her to you know, appear smart. And, you know, you have to speak well and for all of that to happen. You know, could it also be because of her mother's attitude to Creole? It could be. It could be. I mean, she could see her mother and say, you know, I think Creole is a bad language, but I am going to learn to speak well. And her mother probably wants the same thing for her as well. So that could be. Yeah, right. So everybody is basically, we're on the same page. So that is also one of them, right? See, so this one module is not as complex as the one before it. So Andrea, then B says, any possible justification for Andrea's surprise that Natasha spoke English so well? Since answer is already there, I'm gonna go through it. So yeah, why would Andrea be surprised that Natasha spoke English so well? Natasha's background, right? It said that Andrea, she has never been further than Kingston. And furthermore, her mother only spoke dialect. So it's weird that a child can speak such good English when her mother doesn't. And this is all that she has been exposed to growing up, right? Her level of education is another one. Natasha was a primary school student. How can she speak English so well? Andrea is a university student studying languages, and she can't even speak as well as she can. So that's weird. And then she was a child, like no child she knew had such an aspiration or even knows how to speak so well. So those things add up to Andrea just being shocked that this little girl is speaking English so well that which is beyond her years. You know, she's young, children normally grow what they learn. See, so we get the gist of it. We can see what it is saying. C, remember we're writing one big essay. So part C says, what does Mrs. Jackson's behavior reveal about her attitude to the use of Creole? So, you know, she's insulted, right? She thinks Creole itself is bad, yet the babysitter, Andrea, is trying to communicate with her in Creole. You know, she feels bad, like, you don't think that I can speak proper English? Why don't you respect me and communicate with me in English, despite the fact that I talk Creole, kind of thing, you know? So she's embarrassed, so she got up and leave as quickly as possible. And then now she was trying to speak properly, suggests that she links English to being culture. Remember, let me go back up to the thing. It says, you know, she, yeah, Mrs. Jackson brought Natasha, she had tried to speak properly. So she was trying, you know, she knows that she doesn't speak good English, but she was trying nonetheless so that she doesn't appear to be uneducated or less than or below her kind of thing, right? You know, most Jamaicans are unable to speak proper English, so they view Creole as belittling. Wouldn't that be a repeated answer? No? It's not repeated. Remember the first question was dealing with why Andrea was very surprised that Natasha spoke English. The second question was, what are some of the things that we see in the mother's behavior that reveal her attitude to the use of Creole? Right? She thinks it was degrading. So we're explaining that answer. She thinks it was degrading because she tried to speak English, but she was insulted that she was being communicated with in Creole. And then now, because she sees that trying to speak properly means that I am cultured and I'm civilized, but Creole means that I am not civilized. So talk to me in English, like you have some respect. We are on the same level. I'm not beneath you. That is what she was basically saying. You know, I am trying to speak to you in English. So you must try to speak to me in English. Right? I am affording you the same level of respect that I expect of you. Because teacher spoke to her in Creole, she saw it as the teacher had no respect to her. Yeah, that is true. That is exactly what happened. Other comments, forgive me if I miss anything. She thinks Creole is inferior to standard English. Yeah, Andrea underestimating Natasha's intelligence as she's young. Yeah, she's young. Children normally grow and they learn. Okay, yeah. So we get the idea. We get the idea of it, particularly with respect to the mother. The mother was trying to speak to her, Andrea, the babysitter, in English. So she was saying, I'm speaking to you in English. You should respect me by speaking to me in English as well. All right. And D, part D, as just like the first one, how communication could be enhanced through a video presentation of this scene. That is always almost always part D, right? Part 4 of that question. You know, it's either a video presentation or it's a play or it's a movie. The point is, it's something that is visual. I must be able to see it. So if we acted this scene out in real time, what are some of the things that would enhance the communication? And it's the usual answers. It's the props, it's the setting, it's the costumes, it's the gesticulations, it's how the characters react, it's the non-verbal forms of communication. This answer is always the same. So it's just for you to be able to put that on the paper and to remember how it is that persons will act, what will they do. So some non-verbal forms of communication would be revealed more. It would give meanings behind words. Audience would get to see how Natasha reveals her unimpressed attitude when she said, oh, you're just studying Spanish and French. That doesn't sound impressive. Or how Andrea looks at Natasha curiously as she speaks. More importantly, we would have seen Mrs. Jackson's embarrassment, right? So there are more non-verbal stuff that will happen that we would see in a video presentation, right? B, costume would have great interest. You know, we would see that Natasha, how Natasha dresses it. She dresses properly because she speaks properly. We see how characters react to changes. For example, Mrs. Jackson, you know, she was happy at first when she saw her and trying to speak English. Then she became sad when she was being communicated to in Creole. And then the props might, you know, would suggest the particular setting that we would see. So remember, that answer is always the same. Yeah, linguistic insecurity when speaking Creole as a way to cover up her insecurity and seem at a social level with Andrea. Can it also be a film? Yeah, it can be. Anything that's visual. Film, video, play, movie, doesn't matter. TV, whatever the case is. The point is, answers are always almost the same. Props, costumes, gesticulations, non-verbal forms of communication, setting, and so on, right? So do we get that? Do we understand it? Vocalics, yeah, we would get to see or get to hear the differences in the tone and the range of voice and all those other things. Vocalics, proxemics, kinesics, all of those would also come out. Right? You get more marks if you add those jargons to your vocabulary, but we're not here to go through the jargons. We're here to go through how best to efficiently answer these kinds of questions and to make sure that you have what is required in the answer. So it's not the things like adding the vocalics is like putting on the flair and the extra stuff on it so that you know that you get marks. But if you don't put it, it doesn't mean that you won't get it. right? We want to see what the main answer is on paper. All right. Let us move on to the last of the three, because I did say I want to go through 3 of each just to make sure that you guys have it solid. And then we take another 10-minute break, and then we move on to the last module. All right, so this is a poem. It's short, so I read it 2 times. So, A Tale of Two Tongues. Miss Ida speaks only English to God. Scholars cannot fault the diction of her graces and prayers. To her, it is the language of holy things and the giver of commandments. Deserves a grammar of respectability, as firm and as polished as his tablets of stone. But to fellow mortals, she speaks Creole, the tongue of the markets and fields, the language of labrish, susu, proverbs and stories, hot words, tracings, and preke. It is the way to get hard ears picnic to listen and face the men to keep off. It is the tongue of belly laughs and sweet body action. And to Miss Ida, it is no bother to laugh and suffer in one language and worship in another. So, that one seemed pretty clear. You have the first stanza is talking about English and who she speaks perfect English to, and the next one talking about Creole. So let me read it again. A Tale of Two Tongues. Miss Ida speaks only English to God. Nobody else, only God. Scholars cannot fault the diction of her graces and prayers. To her, it is the language of holy things and the giver of commandments. Deserves a grammar of respectability, as firm as polished and as polished as his tablets of stone. But to fellow mortals, she speaks Creole, the tongue of the markets and fields. The language of labrish, susu, proverbs, and stories, hot words, tracings, and preke. It is the way to get hard ears picnic to listen and face the men to keep off. It is the tongue of belly laughs and sweet body action. Right? That paragraph sounds very descriptive compared to the first one. And to Miss Ida, it is no bother to laugh and suffer in one language and to worship in another. Right? That's A Tale of Two Tongues by Earl Mackenzie. So in an essay of no more than 500 words, again, we're going through, discuss the difference in language in stanzas 1 and 2. That should be, I'm listening to the answers, but that should be clear, it should be apparent. What is the difference in language in stanza 1 and stanza 2? Nobody has said anything yet? No? Stanza 1, proper standard English. Stanza 2. All right, so this is to remind everybody, this is module 2, language and the community. All right, so dealing with Creole, patois, dialect, whatever you want to call it, and standard English and the differences between them. So the difference, discuss. So we're not asking you to just state it in a way, we're telling you to discuss it, right? Explain it. Don't just identify it. You have to look at those key words. If it says identify, you identify. It says state, you state. It says discuss, explain, analyze, assess, then you know you have to write a little bit more than usual. So the answer, difference in language is made clear by the distinctive characteristics that have each with respect to pronunciation, lexicon, and syntax. The language is standard 1 is standard English, and the language in 2 is a combination of Creole and standard English. So everybody kind of get that already. All right. So next one, attitudes to English and Creole as revealed in the poem. So this one is important. The attitudes. Right. See, I raised hand. I'm going to allow you to speak before I go on.
Oh, sir, in stanza 1, I'm seeing a mix of standard English and Creole.
1 or 2? You mean 2? Right, this
I meant.
This is the second one. So in the second one, there's a mix. In the first one, it's purely standard English. Right? See, first one is purely standard English. Second one is a mix of the two of them. Right? So attitude towards English, standard English is not a dialect. Everything that is not standard English is dialect. Attitude towards language is one of respect and superiority, and attitude towards Creole is disrespect and informality. Yes. Yeah, basically. So, you know, in standard English, it literally says that she speaks English only to God, nobody else. So I'm praying to God. It means that my deference to God, my respect for him is so great that he only deserves to have his prayers to him in standard English, as opposed to everybody else, right? In the markets, in the fields, in just about everywhere. Proverbs, labrish means gossip and susu. Jamaican proverbs, preke means like a bad situation. Hot words, tracings, you know, when they cuss somebody out. Hard days, picnic, you're going to curse them off. Face the men, you're going to curse them off in patois. You're not going to speak to people like that in standard English. It does not bring across the same sort of vigor that we want it to, right? So in those day-to-day situations, we see that these persons now do not deserve my respect, right? They deserve for me to speak to them in patois, in Creole, in dialect, whatever it is, right? Because the effect is going to be greater. I can't curse off if a man is troubling her and she's going to curse off the man in standard English, she's probably going to laugh at her. The children will probably do the same thing, right? I can't really trace off somebody in standard English. So those day-to-day situations, I'm going to use patois, right? So, you know, the poem English language is seen as superior. She only uses it as reverential aspect, hence the attitude to English is that of superiority, right? You know, seriousness, the respect, the deference, the superiority, all of those things that it influences her attitude to Creole. So let me read the formal answer. It is clear that the persona uses both English and Creole. It is also clear that she also attaches different attitudes to each. It is very clear that she sees standard English as the language of the gods. She believes that only God is worthy enough for this language. Creole is a language of laughs and suffering. She did say, she said, I am going to laugh and suffer in one language and worship in another, right? So only in bad times and in light-hearted times, I must use Creole, but every other time I'm going to use standard English, right? So Creole is the language of laughs and suffering in that it is good enough to speak to all man, but not to God. It is a tongue of markets and fields. Putting aside, but keeping in mind how the persona views this language, we can attach attitudes to how it is viewed in general. English is viewed as a civilized language that people use in formal situations. And she attaches that attitude to prayer, right? Only when I'm praying to God. People believe that this is the proper way of communicating. Creole is therefore an uncivilized way of speaking. It is a language of markets and fields, as she said, and it is informal and uncivilized, as most persons had been saying. And the last question, is it the last? Yeah, I think it's the last one. How a televised reading of this poem could enhance its meaning. Like I said, it's always a visual representation. So we see how the poet expresses himself as he changes from stanza 1 to stanza 2. Stanza 1 will be calm and very polished and uppity and what have you. And stanza 2 is feisty and it's cosmic, and you know, you must laugh and or cry or curse. It must evoke those sorts of emotions from you. And we will see the way the poet uses to pronounce the words. Would he treat both languages in the same way, which can help us in determining the attitude to both languages, right? So yeah, as I said, anything with television, film, plays, and video and stuff, visual representations, you're going to see, you have to speak about the setting, the gesticulations, the costumes. And I'm not trying to say this to make you remember it mechanically. It's just that imagine if you're watching a play, what are some of the things you would see coming out? So if I was to put this into a play, right, we would see that she's praying to God, standard English, flawless diction, flawless grammar. But now she's in the markets, she's in the fields, she's gossiping with people, she's saying proverbs and stories, tracing off people, cursing out the young children, cursing off the men, full of belly laughs. You must imagine somebody laughing, like, you know, them belly bottom hurting them and things like that. So we can see that the clear differences between the two of them. And that is basically module 2, section B, right? So we're gonna take another 10 minutes and come back at 20 minutes to 5, and then we'll go through the last one, the last module. All right, so same treatment, guys. If anybody drops off, if your friend drops off, just tell them to come back in 10 minutes then. And then we'll go through the last one. But What do you want me to know? Main points and main purpose, tone, register, all of that. To answer that question, no. For module 2, you don't really need to know things like main point and purpose and organizational strategies and language stuff and what have you. I mean, I know that some of you are sending me messages privately, but I'm sorry I couldn't respond privately. So just to answer the question so everybody has the benefit of the answer, no, you don't need to know that for module 2. It's only for module 1. Those are the things you focus on. Module 2 is just things that attitudes to language, linguistic and non-linguistic factors. All of the things like vocalics, proxemics, kinesics that you visualize or that you hear, those are the things you need to know for module 2, not for module 1. Right? Are these extracts repeated? Some of them might be, but I don't think they're going to repeat them in totality. You might find that they're going to combine elements of a few of them, but it's nothing to worry about because as we have seen, that's why I'm going through 3 of them, multiple of them to show you that the differences, the variations in the question is not great, right? So if you do 1, you do all of them. You know how to do. If you know to do 1, you know to do all. All right. So we're gonna take another 10 and then we'll come back at 20 minutes to 5. All right, guys, we're back. Is everybody still seeing the screen? And you can hear me well, right? So just need one person to indicate.
I can hear you, sir.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so we're going into module 2006, module 3, and we're gonna do 3 out of these. So not 6, not 8, not 7, 4 and 5, 3, 4 and 5. Right. And this one is the shortest one. It's worth the same number of marks, but you're required to do even less than the one before. All right. So it's speaking and writing. You know, you're usually given a scenario where you must prepare something. So like, what is it that you would write in communication? Like, is it a memo? Is it a memo? Is it you know, a flyer? Is it something to be disseminated? Who is the audience? So these are, before you start your essays, before we go into the question, you have to think about those things. You're talking about the elements of communication. That's what this module deals with, right? The elements of communication. So yeah, this document is going to be sent. Just to reiterate, the answers are going to be provided. You don't have to worry about it. You can take your screenshots if you want. Right, make your notes same way, but you don't have to worry about if you miss anything, right? The point is to listen to what I'm saying so that you're able to write your answers better. So the first things you want to think about when you're doing this module 3 is speaking and writing, the elements of communication. The first thing you learn in comm studies. So your audience is something you have to think about. Your medium, your channel, your encoding the message, decoding the message, noise, feedback. So write down these things when you're writing the question, and so you don't miss any of them. These are the elements of communication, right? How you encode the message or you decode the message, right? Who is conceptualizing the message? Who is the messenger, right? Those are the things you're thinking about with this module, see? So it says the questions in this section tend to rely on a candidate's ability to write and express oneself. As such, it is important for one to understand that anything that has to do with composing a presentation or has to rely on one's opinions will not be answered. It is keen to know, however, that you will be directed as to how to approach it, right? And you're given a very small, short scenario. So we're doing 2003 first. You are a member of an environmental protection group that is concerned about shipments of nuclear waste through Caribbean waters. Your group is trying to sensitize persons in the community to the potential threat and to persuade them to join a protest march, right? Sometimes they'll ask you to write an essay. Other times they'll break up the question like with this one. So the answer is already there. Indicate an appropriate channel and medium that you would use for the above purpose. And just to say that these questions were way back. So this is 20 years ago, from 2003. Times have changed. Social media is now a big thing, and there are many different areas of communication. So I'm not going to expect you to merely reproduce the answers that are here, because you have way more channels, way more mediums, way more things that you could put in that are contemporary to modern times. So, you know, IG didn't exist back then. TikTok, Twitter, all of them were not around. So we can incorporate those things into our answers now. You know, WhatsApp wasn't there. You never have broadcast messages and things like that. So indicate an appropriate channel. So we're not going to, don't focus too much on the answers here. I just want you to be able to understand the differences between channel, medium, how you would encode a message. What are some of the things by disseminating information in this modern day and age. So you're a member of an environmental protection group that is concerned about shipments of nuclear waste. You want to sensitize people in the community to the potential threat and persuade them to join a protest march. So what is an appropriate channel and medium that you would use for the above purpose, right? I want to hear answers. What would you put into such presentation, right? So I just mentioned, you can send out a broadcast message to all your WhatsApp groups and things like that. But what are some other stuff? What would you put in a presentation like that? What is the content? Those are the things you have to think about. How would you compose the message? Right? I'm going to allow you to speak.
I was thinking you could make a video.
Yeah, you can
and share it on TikTok.
You can tweet it. You know, Twitter has a very large reach. You know, the algorithm.
Sir?
Yeah.
I was saying you could do a television advertisement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. All right. But focus on the question, channel and medium. So we have to go through that a little bit, right? So the channel is how it is conveyed, right? The medium is what conveys it. So writing is a channel, speaking is a channel, you know, visual is a channel, but the medium now are things like the Gleaner, the newspaper, the TV itself, the social media platform. So it's important to understand that difference, right? So writing is a channel, but the medium is a Gleaner. Voice is a channel, but the medium is IG video, or reels, or whatever you want to call it. The channel is visual, so you have a video. Channel is audio, so you have a voice note. Those are the differences between medium and channel. So bear in mind that. So you see, it's spoken channel, the medium is a general meeting or a speech. So TikTok would be great since it's easily accessible. Short video is a channel, nuclear waste medium can be TikTok, fine. So, right, so let me go over that again. The channel is how it is conveyed, right? The channel is the how, the medium is the what. So the channel, you can convey it by writing, you can convey it by audio, you can convey it by video. So text, audio, video. The medium now is what actually conveys it. So the Gleaner conveys text, TV conveys video, voice notes convey audio, right? So that is the difference that you need to know, right? Channel, visual, medium could be television or digital poster, and none of these answers are wrong. Like I said, it's just about how you can explain it. So you don't just identify, you need to explain and justify why we're using this, right? So you could use a broadcasting car that drives around the community with a pre-recorded message. Yes, that is called a town crier. So medium, poster, yes, all of those. But bear in mind that you have a whole heap of them that you can use, but you need to know, justify which one is the best, which one is most appropriate, which one is better than the others, right? So if I use a flyer, why would a flyer be more appropriate in this instance than on social media, for example? Right? You have to think about that because those questions are usually asked in this module, right? So in composing a presentation, first think about what you're going to write. It mentions shipments of nuclear waste. You can introduce listeners and readers. And a nice TikTok video. Somebody mentioned TikTok. A TikTok video would be very useful for this. Reels would be useful for this because you want to keep the person engaged. You don't want to see something that's on a flyer, and forget about it. So yeah, have a little graphics and other visual effects and what have you. Where are they coming from? What are nuclear waste? How harmful can it be? All of those definitions you can have in short sentences as the TikTok video is shown. Remember to be persuasive, right? Yeah, it has to be accompanied by a certain tone. So persuasive techniques, rhetorical questions, authoritative sources, data. You can splice a clip of somebody, a professor talking about something in it, the use of a formal register, things like that as you make a video. All of you guys are young, so you know how to really put that into a presentation. Local radios. Yeah. You also have to think about the fact that not everybody has social media, and you have to think about the audience. So, you can have a multimedia strategy. You can mention that, I think that this is better for this audience and this is better for this audience, and you have a whole strategy. I see a raised hand. I'm going to allow you to speak.
Sir, since I said they were going to do like a protest about it, it's most likely that young people would like go out to like march and like their signs and everything. So would it like most likely to appeal to the younger people since they're going out to like march about it, like protest about it? So you could use like TikTok, for example, or like Instagram as they're more engaged in than older people.
Yeah. So that is definitely a part of the answer. Like I said, it's about how you are going to justify the answer. So you say, okay, we're going to use this medium because it appeals more to young people than X medium. And that's how you say it's appropriate. So another thing, like they said, to compose your presentation, so you might maybe required to write the actual words of your presentation. That says, remember you're in an exam and the examiner doesn't expect you to know any real scientists or real statistics. You can literally make something up. You can say, according to James Brown, 25% of nuclear waste is dumped in the Caribbean. The point is, it must sound persuasive, right? When I'm reading it, I'm able to tell that you understand what the question is saying, right? So we don't know who this person is, we don't care. You're in an exam, and it's to prove that you can make a presentation. So make up as many statistics and sources as you want or you need, right? So part B says, write a paragraph explaining the appropriateness of your composition. And the appropriateness of your composition, as I said, justify the medium. Like, why do we include this in our message? Why do we use this channel? What is it supposed to achieve? What is the value added? So tone is important, register. Readers are made to understand the main point and the purpose, and they would act towards and do something about it. It's supposed to galvanize people to action. It's not, you have a protest, you have a march. You want people to participate, you want people to go there and to join. So what is it about this, transmitting this to them, that is going to make that happen, right? So remember, not everybody's composition is related to the above. Remember, what you write is up to you, and how you organize it and present it would suggest its appropriateness. So remember, I said that for this module, you have the most latitude, right? So that is what you need to understand with this one, right? So, and like that, that's 25 marks, and that question is basically finished. Right? So, I feel some persons want to ask me questions, but they're probably not being direct with it. So just raise your hand and ask the question, because I can't respond by text. I can respond by speaking, so that they can see. So let me read it in the chat. All right, so move on to the next one. 2004, because like I said, it's very short. All you need to know are the elements of communication. And once you know that and you're able to compose a message, then the rest of the question takes care of itself. So let me read this scenario. Your community market, so bear in mind it's a market, has just been renovated and vendors and authorities are quite pleased with the results. However, at a management meeting, the need for vendors to cooperate with the authorities to maintain the market's cleanliness has been raised. You have been approached to conduct a campaign to make vendors aware of their responsibilities. You are well aware that the subject matter must be handled in a delicate manner. So the question asks you to discuss the approach that you would take in creating the campaign in terms of A, the communication challenges you would expect to find when targeting the vendors. You're dealing with a market and you're talking to vendors. So that's going to influence your choice of channel, medium, your communication strategy, and the content of your presentation. So what are some of the challenges that you're going to find in this particular instance? Anybody? No? This is somewhat linked to the previous module, in terms of the language that you're going to use and what are some of the strategies. So, as I said, deciding on the medium and the channel, understanding the best way to communicate with the vendors in a delicate manner, what particular language should be used, as I just mentioned, or consider to make it absolutely clear, and how to make it persuasive, right? So differences in dialect, it might be distracting surroundings, so you have to use something that will get their attention, language barriers, noise, yes, all of those are correct. 2 persons have their hand raised. Allow you to speak.
So I was thinking it would be hard to get the vendors to show up to the campaign.
Why would it be hard to get them to show up?
If the person who's enticing them to show up doesn't have a lot of authority or like a lot of influence, they might feel like it's not important to show up to the meeting.
All right, yeah, that's fair. Remember, the management committee for the market is the one who is organizing the meeting, and more than likely, so that would probably include like your counselor or your mayor or somebody like that. So like for those who are in Jamaica, like the mayor of Kingston, shows up to Coronation Market. Yeah, the mayor is a pretty popular person. I'm sure a lot of persons want to hear what he's saying, but if you want to convince people, you can probably bring somebody else as well who you think might pull a crowd. But it's really an internal meeting. It's not like a concert or anything like that. But you want to meet with them in their space. So the medium and the channel that is best for this might be an open air meeting under a tent or close to the market or something, right? You don't want people to have to travel too far or to, you have to think about those realities. Social media might not be appropriate for this kind of thing. Encoding your whole message in formal English might not be a thing. Putting up notices might be something that you do afterwards to kind of solidify the message, like keep the market clean and so on. So it's just about you inserting yourself into the situation to understand, if I was the mayor, if I was a member of this management committee, what is it that I should do to ensure that people are going to listen to me, right? So the next part of the question asks, what is the information that must be relayed and the vocabulary and register you would consider appropriate, right? So information that must be relayed. And there are additions to this. So the importance of the renovation, they're renovating the market, the cost of the renovation, the need for the market to be maintained, the responsibilities of the vendors, what are the consequences of them ignoring the warnings and their responsibilities. You want to ensure that you're not talking down to them. They're equal stakeholders and partners in this process. We both have an interest in this market and we want to keep it clean. Why? How do you get the vendors to understand that, right? We are renovating the market for X reason. It's going to cost this, it's going to last this long. It might be disruptive, but we're going to accommodate you to the best extent possible so that the disruption is minimal. If you have any concerns, please feel free to reach out to us. But we also want you to keep the market clean when it is renovated and keep the facilities intact. if you don't do it, then you're going to pay a fine, or you're going to be banned from the market for so on, or such time. Those are the things that we want you to put in the message that you're going to transmit to them, right? Anybody has anything else that they want to add to that? Would it be best to post flyers since noise will be a possible barrier? Yeah, it would be. So you can hand out flyers at your meeting, and then you can post notices and signs around the market. Keep the place clean. Well, not these exact words, but to the effect of keep the place clean. If you don't keep it clean, this is what's going to happen. You pay $10 fine, something like that, right? You want to make it clear. It must be clear, unambiguous, it must be brief as possible. And then you will, you get the gist of it, right? Incentives, yeah, that's another good thing. Incentives, you know, if you keep the market clean, so it doesn't always have to be punishment, it can be encouragement or inducement. We are incentivizing you to keep the market clean. If you do that, then we will give you, you know, something or 10% off something, whatever the case is. The point is, I know you understand, so I don't really have to go too deep into it. So, as I said, the vocabulary should be simple and persuasive. We should create seriousness in the message being said. The message should avoid using words that the vendors would not understand, as it would cause confusion and a loss of interest. You must speak to them not condescendingly, not oversimplistically, but we want you to communicate in a way that is clearly understood. And the register, of course, must be very formal. You're not going to talk to, unless you have like interjections of patois, you're not going to talk to them in the whole thing as patois. You're going to respect them, speak to them in formal English, because the situation warrants it. It is a serious matter, right? And the message in the main must be like a standard English kind of thing, must be formal, right? And then now it's asking any other organizational strategies as well as visual approaches you would employ in your campaign, right? And we just go through the, as we said, we'll put up signs that say keep here clean, posters, information must be persuasive, there must be monitoring of the facilities, regular meetings will be held, building of dumps around the market for people to dispose of waste. They can even install videos if they want, if it's not too expensive. So things like that. Anything else? What else would you put in a campaign like this? You're renovating a market and you want to make sure it's maintained and preserved for as long as possible. Yeah, I see a raise hand, I'm going to allow you to speak.
So I was thinking, instead of using the standard English, couldn't we use the mesolect form so that it's not too standard where the people feel like you're trying to act like you're better than them, but it's not like the Baselect version where the people feel kind of like insulted.
Yeah, that works. Mesolect works, or a mixture of both standard and Creole. So not fully Creole, but not fully standard English either. So that works. Mesolect works. I say you interject with patois occasionally just to keep them awake, but you also recognize the seriousness of the occasion. It's not a play matter, right? Or garbage bins, yeah, things like that. Those are the things that must accompany the campaign. So you don't just leave it at talking to them or telling them. You're going to also ensure that the thing is maintained and that things will be, you know, we don't have to do this thing again, all right? And now we're gonna go into the last question. As I said, it's very short because all of them are the same thing. So, your country's Board of Tourism intends to promote the country as a destination that offers cultural and business opportunities to visitors. Wealthy elite travelers from Europe, remember the audience, wealthy elite travelers from Europe and North America are to be targeted in this campaign. A, identify the medium you think will effectively promote this campaign. The answer is already there. It's a televised advertisement. Like sandals. Sandals always, I can't ever recall of sandals having to promote through social media. I've never seen it before. But they always have television campaigns that appear on the major cable networks in the US. And that's how most of those persons see it. You know, wealthy elite travelers who are, most of them happen to be older. So I don't even think that many of them use social media. So television is usually best. Are we allowed to use numbers in the essay, or do we have to put them in words? You can use numbers, you can use statistics. Remember, you are creating the presentation. So you have more latitude to do, you know, you can use numbers. Yeah, and we don't care if it's true or not. You just have to make sure that it makes sense. I see somebody mentioned YouTube. YouTube also works. The point is it must be visual, because you're showing people a tourist destination. So you want them to know, have that. You always see those advertisements that use Bob Marley music in the background, or some reggae music, or some of them use Afrobeats and what have you. The point is we must be able to see it and hear it, and it creates in our mind a sense of relaxation and a getaway and an escape. That is the whole purpose of the campaign for a tourist organization. All right. So next part of the question, write the presentation the Board of Tourism would use to promote your country. So we're not going to, you are going to write the actual presentation, but we're not going to do that right now. We just want to know what should you put in there. So some of the things you must consider. In composing your presentation, you have to think about the tone, the audience, and the register that is appropriate. All of these things we discussed already. Your tone must be pleasant and the register very formal, right? You know, you have, it must appeal to you. It's an advertisement. I want you to come to the country. So I'm trying to put the best of the country on display. And then you think about the special features of the country. Like, you know, we all know how the Jamaica Tourist Board ads stay for those of us in Jamaica. It's appealing to tourists. You show a waterfall, river, you show all of the drone shots of the different places, the coastline and what have you, the beaches, people, the blend of cultures, all of that. It must be persuasive. There must be use of persuasive techniques, include illustrations, you know, rhetorical questions like, you know, why are you not here, kind of thing. Those are the things you must ask in a presentation, like book your next flight, something. Use loaded and emotive words, like it must be, you know, paradise. It must be, I am coming here because all of your troubles will go away. So you exaggerate a little bit as well. Okay, you want them to come. So it's an effort in marketing. And students who have an interest in marketing, you know what are some of these psychological stuff that you must add to it to make it persuasive. Let me address the question. Also, for scenarios where they want a timetable of events, how do you, for example, show? You can write a table as long as it's there, or you write it as a list. So you say March 1, March 2, March 3, March 4, and you put it beside it. It doesn't matter. Try not to, and I want to encourage you to not overthink, but just put it on the paper. We want to see that you understand it, and you get marks for expression, yes, but content is the more important thing. So we just want to see it, it's there. It's better for you to write something that is not up to standard, but it is there, than for you to overthink to try to get it perfect and then worry about how it comes across. Just put it on the paper, it doesn't matter. Right, so C says, point out the strategies you would employ to enhance the presentation and explain why you would consider these appropriate. So the answer is not there, but I'm encouraging us to give us answers for that one. What strategies would you employ to enhance the presentation and explain why it was appropriate? I had said some of these already, like you can put voiceovers, you can put in the music in the background, you put in the drone shots. You know, drones didn't exist back when they were creating these things. You would have probably had to use like helicopters and what have you, but now you have more leeway for it to show up. So like, think about modern advertisements and like those people on social media who create all of those ads, the photographers, the videographers, the persons who do the graphics design and visual effects. Like, give me a modern day answer. Like social media influencers, that could work. Images, Jamaican music, right? It doesn't have to be Bob Marley all the time. It can be Chronix, Sweet Jamaica, and you know, beaches, all of that. So don't think about a traditional advertisement. Just put in modern stuff. What else would you put in a presentation, right? For 2023, it's not 2003. Social media influencers. Anything else like, you know, parties, billboards with scenery. Yeah, parties is a big thing in tourism today. Most of the parties that happen on the North Coast and so on during Easter and summer and them time there. Anything else, guys? Food, waterfalls, crystal clear beaches. Yeah, all of them, all of them. You're all correct. Does module 3 have to be in a standard essay format? No, it doesn't have to be. In fact, I don't think it can be. It has to be broken up. Unless they say write a 500-word essay, more than likely you're going to break up the presentation into writing the actual presentation or the things that you need to consider for the presentation. And I don't think you can get that in one long continuous prose, right? So yeah, that is really it. We went through our 3 questions, 3, 4, and 5. So I'm gonna stop sharing, but I'm going to take questions now. I did say I was going up to 5:30, so we have 20 minutes or less. So I want to thank everybody who's here. We're not done. I'm just taking questions in general about module 1, 2, and 3. So not just module 3 that we just finished. So I'm opening the floor because I did say the last one was gonna be quick. So I need to, let's hear the questions, guys. All right, so I see somebody has raised their hand. So you can go ahead.
Good afternoon. I was watching a video earlier today and it was saying that when it comes to dialectal variations, it was saying that Mesolate, acrylic, and basalate don't fall under 3 different language varieties, but it's actually 1. So I wanted to clarify if it falls under 3 or it's just 1.
All right, so it's a continuum. So if you think of it as a continuum, it's going to appear as 1, right? It's 3 different parts of the same continuum. So it's not really exactly 3, but you know, one of them is furthest from English, the other one is closest to English, the other one is right in the middle, right? So if you think about it that way, then it should be really 1 along the entire continuum. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The chat, so if I see the question come, all right, we must have a short introduction from module 2. Yeah, you can. You're not going to lose marks for having an introduction. So I would recommend it, but you don't need to do it, but it's good to have it. Just a 2-sentence said, the extract is about this and whatever, then you jump into the discussion about language and the community and all of that. So it doesn't have to be elaborate or over the top. And someone asked, if they ask you to write a module 3 essay, can you use personal pronouns to express the strategies you would like to use? I would like to use. Okay. You can, but I don't recommend it. Please, as best as possible, don't insert I. You speak in the 3rd person. Say, you know, this should be, or in passive language, this should be used, that should be used, right? Avoid I or we or what have you just said. It or that or 3rd person, whatever. When they ask for dialectal varieties, what are they asking for? Same thing, Mesolate, basalate, acrylate, those are the dialectal variations of all the languages along the continuum that we just discussed. So, you know, and it's spatially differentiated. So, you know that Kingstonians, for those in Jamaica, Kingstonians patois is different from people in St. Elizabeth, for example. Sometimes you can't understand what they say, right? Persons in country different from persons in town and all of those things, or even persons within town. For those who are in Jamaica, Kingston, you have Upper St. Andrew, the Upper St. Andrew accent compared to Lower St. Andrew and what have you. All right, someone asking for module 3, they said they would expect us to write a presentation. Finish that question. But wouldn't you? But would the organization be different in terms of what they're asking for? Presentation or formal letter or proposal? It depends whether the elements must be there. If in module 3, if you're writing a presentation or a formal letter or a proposal, then you must outline what is going to be in the message, who is the audience, why is it that I'm using this particular medium or channel, and what is the feedback or the noise that I should expect? So those elements are common to anything that you're going to write, whether it's a presentation, a letter, a proposal, whatever the case might be, right? Hope I don't miss any questions. So is language variation the same as dialectal variation? I believe so. I don't want to speak definitively on it, but yeah, because dialect, you know, there's acrolect, mesolect, and baselect in everything. So language variation should be the same as dialectal variation. Where would profane and foreign English fall on? Okay, yeah, all right. Things like profane English, foreign English, I guess would actually be the correct language variation. So they're supposed to be two separate things. Language variation is things like that, profane English, foreign English, and stuff like that. Whereas dialectal variation is lect, mesolect, acrolect, baselect. I hope I don't miss any questions. If they ask you to state both language technique and organizational strategy, we must, or we can just state either one or we choose. No. Usually they're gonna ask you both. So if they ask you to state language techniques and organizational strategies, it's both. They're not going to ask you one or the other. Most times it's always two of them. I'm going through the questions there, so bear with me. Hope I don't miss any. How would you go about writing a conclusion from module 1 or 2? So the conclusion is really just summing up. We spoke about the tone and the register, right? Why it is that these things are important, the appropriateness of the language techniques and the strategies used, suggest alternatives if you don't think they're appropriate, and say that you think the author successfully or unsuccessfully got his point across, and he did it by doing XYZ. That is really the conclusion. It's not supposed to be very extremely long. It's just maybe like 2 sentences. The author achieved his purpose because he did XYZ. Otherwise, he could have done this better if he did XYZ, if he did ABC. Persons asking, how do you write a proposal? So a proposal, if they do ask you that in module 3, is really, like I said, it just needs to make sense. So you would include stuff in it that relate to the time, the date, the place of the event, the medium of the communication that you're going to use, the audience that you expect to attend, what are the channels that you want to use for the thing. Those are the stuff that you put in a proposal. A proposal must be like the how, the why, the what, the where, the when. It's an event, basically. You're proposing that I am going to communicate all of these things at X particular time among X particular people for however long, like a campaign. Usually like a proposal, they ask for a campaign. What are the mediums that I'm going to do? On this date, I'm going to go to Mobe as part of the campaign, then Clarendon, then Mandeville, and we cover the whole island. So that is how you write a proposal. Who, what, when, where, why, like a report kind of thing. I don't see any more questions in the chat. And I know people are probably falling off the call since we are basically finished with the substantive stuff. I just want to remind everybody that you're gonna get access to these materials. So you don't need to worry about it. It will be sent to you. And the recording, of course, you'll have access to that as well. So you don't have to worry. All right, I see a hand up. I'm going to take that question.
Oh, sir, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. So for the proposals, we have to keep in mind what, where, who, and what?
Why?
Oh, why? Oh, okay.
Yeah, those are the typical elements of a proposal. Right, so it's 5:20. We don't really have to go up to 5:30 if anything. If we're done. I'm still taking questions. So, but if I don't get any questions for a little while, then I'm going to end it pretty soon. All right, someone asked, how hard is it to get a 1 in com studies? It's actually really not very hard. I have known people who did very terribly in English language. They hated English and English literature, and they did very well on com studies exam. They even got national placements. All right, and it's not the reason why it comes to this is like that is because unlike other subjects where you need to know specific stuff, you need to know a few specific stuff here, but it's not that many. It's about your understanding and your expression. You need to be able to express clearly that what you're seeing makes sense. Once you do that, you have satisfied the requirements to get an A in the module, and the more A's you get, the closer you are to a 1. So it's really not hard. One of the easiest way.
Sir,
Mm-hmm.
I've been hearing persons asking about how they would get the document. What I would like to know is, how do you get the document you're working from?
So the organizer of the call New Jamaica Foundation, don't know if persons have the WhatsApp group or how they were able to, the person you found out about this marathon from, that's the person who would have all of these two. The person who put on the marathon.
Okay, sir.
Another question is asking, how would you explain in a module 2 essay when they tell it to write about the Creole and linguistic features used? Explain a module 2 essay when they asked to write about Creole and linguistic features used. Right, so remember we went through that. So the Creole and linguistic, I really doubt they're gonna ask you about that because linguistic features, okay, nobody uses Creole mostly because of its linguistic features. But you might say that to answer such a question, you use Creole because it is more expressive, because the words are shorter, they give a better effect, the pronunciation is easier, the spelling is easier, and so it's easier for me to communicate certain emotive features like sadness and happiness and joy and what have you. So that's the best way I would answer that question. I'm using Creole because I like how it sounds. Remember, sound is a, phonics is a thing, diction is a thing, grammar is a thing. So I'm using Creole. Creole's linguistic features are, they're short, spicy, they sound good, they convey emotions better than English, and it's easier for me to spell if I'm writing it. It's easier for me to spell, right? Any strategy on module 1 and module 2? Okay, so for module 1 and module 2, module 1, the strategy must be think about what the linguistic features, the language techniques and the organizational strategies are. That must be the first thing that you look through the essay for, right? After you have identified the purpose, because when you finish reading it, you're going to realize that this thing is, the purpose and the main points are going to become clear and easy, right? After that, you look for the 3 of them. Look at how the paragraphs are set up. Look at how the sentences are set up. Look at how the punctuation is set up. And then identify the obvious linguistic, the language stuff. So if you see sources of authority, put it down. If you see the statistics, put it down. If you see illustrations, put it down. As soon as you identify, just mark it and take a quote it or put a line there and just write it back. That's the easiest way to do it. You must be able to identify. That's where the bulk of the marks are going to come from with that module 1. For module 2, all you need to be able to do is identify the attitudes to language. So what is the context why Creole is being used here? Why is standard English used here? Who is using it, and why would they use that, right? So for module 2, that is what you have to do. For why do people use standard English and Creole in an extract again? people use it for different reasons. So standard English and Creole, I want to convey the fact that standard English is professional, it's polished, it's civilized, so communication is better in that Creole because it's more expressive, it's more joyous. I can convey anger and I can convey different feelings of different things. So that's why I would use each of them to answer that question. When someone is asking when is the recording going to be available, by hopefully by either today or tomorrow. The point is you'll get it before your exam, so you don't have to worry about that. What if I feel like you can't find any language techniques in module 1? Well, you ought to be able to find language techniques in module 1 because they will be there. So if you can't find it, then it's something will be very, very wrong, right? Because they're going to have something, whether it's a simple metaphor that is going to miss you, or an assonance or an alliteration, just write it down. If it's even one you say, if you don't say all three, just put it down the same way. But you should be able to see more than one. They're not going to be so terrible that they give you something that you can't identify. There are the other questions I see in the chat. I don't think I see anything else.
Sir.
I'm listening.
Sir, can you give a run through on module 3 and what exactly is crucial to be known?
All right, so module 3, you need to just know the elements of communication: medium, channel, encoding, decoding, feedback, noise, content of the message, all of those things. The first thing that you learn in Com Studies, that's what you're going to need from module 3. Right? And how to create messages. What is the audience? What must I put in it? How should I convey it? All of those things are module 3. That's why it's so short, because it's the first thing you learn. Okay, so I see a question here. I don't think I quite know how to answer it. So just using the IE, IA, or the PEE module method for module 2. Okay, so I must admit that I'm not familiar with those abbreviations. I did Com Studies more than a decade ago. I know that the teaching is much different, even though you guys have everything consolidated in multiple choice. I don't think we used to do 3 papers, and I think you guys only do 2. So a lot of things might have changed in that I'm not familiar with. But I would commit to do more research, and I will send the answer along with the other things that the organizers are going to send. So I'm going to take a note of that one. So someone is asking, what about ethos, pathos, and locus? Yeah, those are things that are relevant to module 3. We didn't need to explore them today in our answers, but those things that appeal to emotion. So things that appeal, those are jargons that you just need to put down. They're not requirements for answers. So they're not going to ask you, did they use ethos, pathos, or logos? No, those things are coming on multiple choice, not for a paper 2. So these things you're going to need to know for the multiple choice, but not for your exam next week. But if you want to put it down, you can put it down. You can say that it's empathetic, so it's ethos. Logos is appealing to logic, if you can identify it correctly. But if you can't, then don't bother to risk it. Somebody's asking, for the module 2 essay, do you have to quote lines from the extract to explain your points? It would be good if you did quote it, or you can just put the line number, especially if it's a poem, you can just put the line number. So, but you need to identify it somehow, whether you actually write it back and put it in quotes, or you're going to put the line number instead. So you need to be able to show the examiner so that they have an easier time being able to identify it. All right. All right, any more questions, guys? We're running up to 5:30. I don't want to go past that. I mean, as I said, I think we have covered a lot. I think based on the answers that you guys had, you guys should be, you know it, you know your stuff. So don't think about it too deeply, right? How much time should you spend on each essay? All right, so what was the exam again? 2 hours and 15 minutes or something like that. 40 minutes is good for each essay. That's what I typically recommend, 40 to 45 minutes. Someone else is asking, module 1, can you group all organizational strategies into one topic sentence, or do you have to separate them? I would suggest you separate them. You can mention all of them in one sentence, but it's for clarity. Remember, you also get marked on expression. Just separate them if you can. 2 hours and I said 2 hours and 30 minutes. So 2.5 hours. So divide that by 3. So that is what, 40, 45 minutes for each of them. So 50 minutes. 50 minutes. Well, if you count the time that you have to look over, like 10 minutes, then I don't know if I hand this up or it wasn't taken down. But you can.
There's a hands up. My question is, as a person, a teacher you said who's like marked papers, how much are students penalized for going over the word limit?
It depends on how much over the word limit. So if you go over by like 5 words or anything within 20 words is acceptable. If they tell you 500 and you write 600, they're going to take off a lot of marks. So if you go over by like 500, like you write 505 or 510, that's not material. But if you write a whole lot of 2 paragraphs and you write 600 words, in fact, I can't even say that they're going to take off marks. Wherever 500 stops, if you see like a sentence or 2 after that, then they're going to just read it and give you your marks. Wherever 500 stops, that's where they stop reading. So if they see 2 paragraphs after that, they're not going to read it. And it doesn't matter if the points are in those 2 paragraphs, you're not going to get marks for it. So be mindful and be careful of those things. All right. So guys, we're at 5:30. Do we actually count the words? No, we don't count the words. We just estimate. So, if we say that people write 8 to 10 words per line, then that's about for 500 words, that's 40 to 50 lines. So, that should be like a page or 2 pages or a page and a half. If you write 3, 4, 5 pages, then we know that that's way over 500. So nobody has time to sit down and count words. Right? Right. So yeah, you lose marks for expression and organization. If you can't express yourself in 500 words, it means that something is wrong. Right. So it's not just about organization, but all right. So guys, it's 5:30, and we really do have to stop here. I think I've facilitated you as best as I could. I'm confident that you will all do very well in your exam. And so I'm wishing you all the best, and thanks everybody who stayed for the entire time. Like I said, you will get access to the material, the recordings and everything. So don't worry about it. All right. So I'm gonna have to stop here and hand over back to New Jamaica. All right. All right. So all the best, guys, and take care.
Okay, thank you so for taking the time out to go over the papers.
Yeah,
You're
welcome.
Yes, sir. Thanks, sir.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks, sir.